Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Worm, a Daily Planet Films podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss the hit web serial Worm week by week, arc by arc. My name is Matt Freeman, your host and emotional wreck. Here's my co-host, Scott Daly. Scott, how are you doing today?
I honestly don't know, Matt. I'm like a ball of emotion ping-ponging off every single wall in my house. This was another arc that was difficult to read. Here we go again.
Yeah, good one though.
Yeah. And as you say, this is the podcast where you, a worm expert, guide me, a first-time reader, through Wildbow's work of superheroes, supervillains, and everything in between, as I inspect, interpret, and even speculate on what the story is and where it is going. This week, we are covering Arc 20, Chrysalis, and thank God, Matt, we get to cover this one all in one episode.
Yeah, I think this certainly qualifies as an unusual arc. It's definitely shorter than a lot of the ones that have preceded it, and there was some interesting discussion about whether this is the capstone for the previous quote-unquote book of Worm, or whether this is the beginning of the next book of Worm. I think you and I feel like it's a good beginning for the next, for what's coming forward.
Yeah, it feels like, the weird thing is it's wrapping up a lot of like the entirety of Worm long plot threads. Like there's stuff from the very first arc that we're wrapping up here, or at least tying off temporarily. So I think that's why it feels a little culminate-y.
Yeah.
But there is very much a feeling, in my opinion, of this is setting the stage for everything that's going to come. We're moving past the events of the previous book and moving into something new and something different and something very, very exciting.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is if this were the last chapter of a paper book, I would feel like, you can't leave me hanging like this. Whereas right. I think it works as the first chapter of a paper book, very, very well. Yeah,
and especially considering that, I think this is my favorite arc so far. I thought about it for a while. I've been going through it, and it's one of those things where this usually happens to me, but the more I think about something I like, the more I like it. So you go through and you read it the first time and you're like, wow, that was really good. And then you start for our prep and you start diving into the details of how this works and what it's doing and how it's doing it. And you're like, wow, this is incredible. And I know we've been really hyperbolic before in the past about some of these arcs, but this is my new favorite, Matt.
Yeah, this is one that I've been waiting for us to get to for a long time, and I actually went out of my way not to tell you that. I think like with the Traveler's arc, I think I tipped my hand. I was like, by the way, I'm really excited about this. And this time I was like, I don't want to do that this time. I don't want to give you any indication that I'm really excited about this one and that this one's really emotional. I just want to let you experience it because I don't know. I just feel like that's more organic.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Because we made some predictions at the end of Arc 19. We made some predictions at the end of the mailbag where what this was going to be, where it was going to go. And I was kind of right high level-y with some of the stuff, but the turns that this story takes in this arc were mostly revelatory to me and landed very, very well. And I'm really excited to talk about them. I'm looking forward to this conversation more than I have many of the others.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
Yeah, I know. Especially considering there's no kaiju battles in this arc.
There's no fighting at all. Maybe a little tiny bit.
Yeah, right. It's like I said, it's unusual in structure. It's not this typical build up, fight a big bad, resolution. It's there's, like you said, it's not combat oriented.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott. So in terms of announcements, I guess we should announce that at the end of September, the schedule is going to be a bit wonky. We won't be doing any comments or questions regarding Arc 20 because Arc 21 will be recorded before Arc 20 episode is even released. So we're recording things way before you're hearing them yet again.
Yeah.
So just
this is my fault. My fault once again. I'm going to a film festival starting the 20th of September. I'll be back the 29th, and then you leave, I think. So it's going to be the end of September, beginning of October is going to be a little weird for us. I think we're going to hit all of our episode dates where each Wednesday we'll get a new episode. That's not going to change at all, but all the other stuff we do around those episodes are going to be a bit weird for a while. So sorry about that, but
yeah. Speaking of which, as for comments and questions this week, we did just do the mailbag. From our point of view, was very recently.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. So there hasn't been a lot of time for us to gather any new comments or questions. So we're just gonna move on to the beat by beat this week.
Yeah, let's do it. Which is good because we have a lot to cover.
Yeah. All right. So we open up this chapter, and Taylor is getting out of the shower at her dad's house and using her bugs to help her groom herself while attending to the surrounding area with her power. She's aware of all the bustle for 1,000 feet around her, and she's also thinking about her territory, her hive, which is too far away to watch.
Yeah, that's the first time she's called it that, hasn't she?
Mm-hmm, I think so.
Yeah, I really like how this section starts. I really like that we open on Taylor doing this very rudimentary human thing. She's just taking a shower. She's getting ready in the morning. And we start it in a very rudimentary human way. Just Taylor doing these things. And then suddenly, as if like out of nowhere, the bugs interject themselves into the scene. Suddenly, she's picking up a toothbrush that's being held up by bugs by string and toothpaste and her hairbrush. And it's like we're seeing her bugs. We're seeing her power. We're seeing Skitter invade the scene and invade her life. And this arc is about the death of Taylor. Taylor, the person, not Taylor, the idea, not the literal person, the secret identity. Like we've talked about how she's kind of abandoned this identity before, but we start this chapter off with her trying to get some of it back. But this is formally and officially the death of that Taylor identity. And we start the chapter off by showing these rudimentary things like brushing your teeth. But even in this, the Skitter identity is now pervasive. It's now part of all of it.
Yeah, I can imagine this cinematically, like as the intro of a TV episode. Like you show Taylor getting out of the shower, like from the shoulders up. She, everything is normal, and then she kind of reaches her hand out, and a giant mass of bugs hands her comb or whatever, and you kind of introduce like you said, introduce the bugs in this intrusive way, and it almost foreshadows what's coming. And
it's like it just strikes me as so. It's like an unnecessary use of them. Like it's picking up a toothbrush and a comb. It's like, yes, it's more efficient. Obviously, everything she does with her powers is more efficient, but it's just unnecessary. Like you don't have to do that. And yet she's doing it now because it just becomes so much a part of her life.
Yeah, right. So she heads downstairs to make breakfast. And here, as she's kind of going through her morning, you can't help but notice how overwhelmingly organized she is. Like I'm going to cook some crepes, going to eat them, going to go running. Then I'm going to pretend to go to school while I manage my empire. It's kind of intimidatingly organized.
Yeah. And as all this is going on, she's in her head, doing all her bug stuff still. Like she's kind of only halfway there. She's kind of only slightly present. She's everywhere. She's not one identity anymore.
Yeah.
And the thing I really liked, we didn't even write this down, but what she's wearing here. She's wearing a sleeveless top, a strapless top, I think.
Yeah, strapless top, yeah.
It's totally exposing her shoulders.
Yeah. And like cargo pants, basically.
Yeah, and it's just like how far we've come from the Taylor that wore big, bulky, dark-colored clothing to not draw attention to her or her shape in any way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, yeah. I didn't pick that out, but yeah, you're right. We are hitting a lot of beats in this first chapter where we're seeing how much she's grown and how different Taylor, the individual, is, and they even talk about it specifically.
Yeah, and things coming full circle is one of the big themes of this arc. We're going to hit that a lot. Every aspect of her life, every interaction that she's had at the beginning of the story seems to be coming around on itself again, but with a slight twist or change that usually revolves around how different of a person Taylor is now.
Yep. Yeah, so Danny shows up, her dad. She notices that he's still suffering from his injuries and that he looks old, but she goes ahead and informs him that she's decided that she doesn't think she'll be going back to school. She'll be working instead. And he asks if she would go if he asked her to, hypothetically. And it's easy to skip over because in their back and forth here, she promises that she'll graduate. She says, "I promise I'll graduate." I'm just gonna take a year off. And it's like, wow, do you not realize you're lying, Taylor? Because like, why would things be easier? Like, why would your supervillain life be easier in a year, and that would allow you to go back to school?
Yeah, it's this beat about Taylor's idea that she can return to being Taylor, that she can live this double life again. You know, she tried it for a while, then she abandoned it, and now as things settle, as her hold on the city tightens, she thinks that she has this ability to do both of these things, and it's just completely impractical. You're absolutely right. There's no difference. I mean, maybe there'd be a little more established, but do we really think at any moment that Taylor would allow herself to go through school while dealing with like the pressure and the guilt that she places on herself when she's not helping out the people of her area? Like, it's just, that's never going to happen.
Yeah. This is her fantasy, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this moment where she says, like you said, I'm a different person than I was. And then Danny, he looked up at me, met my eyes, and I could feel my blood run cold. That searching, studying look. He knows?
We talk about setup in these first chapters a lot, and that's because, Matt, the first chapters have a lot of setup in them. Yeah. And this is another example of that. One of the big central things of this entire arc is Taylor's identity and Taylor's secret identity and the discovering of that and what it means. And now we have this moment where Taylor thinks that her father might know who she is, and how that terrifies her. Her blood runs cold. Mm-hmm. Do you think he, on some level, suspects here?
I don't actually. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought about this a lot, and I mean, Taylor reads into expressions so much. Like, I mean, there's literally 1,000 different things that Danny could be thinking when she claims I'm a different person than I was. Like, he could be ruminating on the person that she was, ruminating on what she must have gone through, what happened to her. There's 1,000 different things that he could be thinking. That's just what's on her mind in the moment, because that's one of her greatest fears is him discovering this stuff. So I think you're right. I don't think there's enough there to say, yeah, he knew or he suspected or he thought or anything like that. I
just kind of feel like either you would get it or you wouldn't, because like the moment it popped into Greg's head, for example, he was like, yeah, I mean, she has the same hair, she has the same like body proportions. Like once you know who someone is and you like see them in a costume, then you're like, yeah, I know who that is.
And I think that ties into like my Lisa prediction from a couple weeks ago, that once I got over that main hurdle, then every other little piece of information clicks into place.
Yeah, right. So yeah, he laments the fact that she seemingly went from a relatively obedient daughter to completely leaving the house forever in the course of one conversation, and that he doesn't have a say in her life anymore. She objects that he does, or rather that she'll let him have a say, which he seems to find pretty sad.
Yeah, that's because Matt, it is really sad. I'll let you have a say. That's not actually giving someone power. That's not letting Danny be a parent. That's pity. Yeah. You only have this place in my life because I let you. And I think Danny's response here is perfect, because he basically, slowly takes her hand, kisses her fingers, and says, I hope that if and when you ever have a child of your own, you never have to hear them say anything like that. And then he releases her hand, and that's, I think, as far as we see, like, that's one of the last interactions they will ever have. At least thus far in the story. And it's so perfect, because like you really feel for him in this moment. I think we're going to talk about Danny again as we get to the end, when we see from his point of view in that interlude. But there's a lot going on with this character, and he's so complicated, and the things he's having to go through and the things he's dealing with, and how lost and unsure of what the right thing to do is. You really feel for him in this moment.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll talk about this more later, but I'm feeling very sympathetic to Danny in this arc.
Mm-hmm.
So she tells him that she'll be working at the boardwalk, and he remarks that this is a little too involved with the supervillain in charge, to which she responds by eating her last bite of crepe.
Yeah, Taylor, stop hanging out with that Skitter. Right. Yeah, I think this is another hint that Danny doesn't actually suspect or anything.
Yeah, right. I think so. So he asks if she'll be free for lunch, and she's sort of like, oh, that's going to put a big crimp in my schedule, but she kind of weighs all the pros and cons, and she decides that she can make it work. And in the course of this, she tells him her cell phone number, and he's like, oh, your cell phone? And then he looks sad for a brief moment, then perked up a little.
Yeah, and I think this does something really cool here. I mean, what this does on the surface level is remind the reader about Danny's hatred of cell phones and how that links to Taylor's mother's death and the conflict between them about cell phones that's gone on for much of their interactions in this book. And this got me thinking about a thing Wildbow does that I really appreciate. You know, Matt, in TV shows where they have the previously on section.
Yeah.
And it's always like, those are always edited sharply to remind you of stuff you're going to need to know for the episode.
Right.
So it's like almost telegraphing, like, this is what this episode's going to be about.
Right.
And that always really annoyed me because it's just so transparent and it's such a lazy way of doing it.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, it can get pretty bad where they're basically just like, here's the setup that's going to be paid off this episode. And you're like, oh,
right.
Thanks. I now know exactly what's going to happen.
Right. Especially when it's from like seasons ago. It's like, here's this interaction that happened in season 2, 3 years ago. You remember that?
Right.
Yeah. And what Wildbow does here is I mean, he like, there's a reason you have to do that because your readers forget sometimes. And if you want things to pay off, you need to remind them of it. But there are ways to do it subtly and cleverly. And I think that's what we're doing here in this interaction with Danny, that we remind our readers, remember that Taylor and Danny have this cell phone thing? They have this thing between them because that's how Taylor's mother died. And this is all important information that's going to pay off in a spectacularly terrible way near the end of this chapter. But I just love how it's done without really drawing attention to it. Like, it's not exposition. It's not just telling the audience that you need to know stuff. It's a natural character interaction that serves that purpose.
Yeah, and to remind everyone, the second beat in the 3 beat is the basically reminding you that this exists beat, so that it sticks out in your head as being something other than just like one thing that happened in the course of the movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you can tell that Taylor is from the Northeast because when she goes outside, she complains to herself about the 85-degree heat.
Oh no, 85 degrees.
Yeah.
That's like
85-degree cool is how we would say it.
It's September in Dallas, and that was the low today. So
yeah, now we get our first glimpse of this pretty cool phone code as she looks over her text messages. So basically, her and her minions communicate using this shorthand where everything reads like mundane chatter, but everything is actually code. Like Eric means trouble. Little brother refers to the kids in her territory. The letter U and the word U refer to Skitter and Taylor. I forget which is which, but it's basically just a way of dealing with all their business without being obvious about it.
Yeah, and this is a very advanced form of communication, and it's advanced past the original Undersiders code, where the color and the name thing. I think that serves as a way to kind of show how this team has grown up, how these people have moved beyond this basic level gangstering and are now like fully like almost running a empire, a business, and they have the like it's great. It's great. It's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really significant difference actually, because when they started out, I was thinking like, is it even appropriate to call them a gang? Because like you think of gangs as being like larger groups that have an identity and they have initiations and stuff. The Undersiders were more like just a supervillain team, and yeah, they were referred to as a gang sometimes, but they were really just like a small mercenary team. Now I think they're more like a really like large scale actual gang. In terms of
like they're like the mafia, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Taylor thinks about the portal, and we learn that out-of-town heroes are now being stationed in Brockton Bay to bolster the ranks. Some villains from the Fallen, and I guess heroes from Haven are also in town. And we learn a bit about the Fallen Cape Valafor. I think that's how you say that. Didn't actually look it up. Who's a stranger class cape like imp.
I've always said Valefor. which
That
might be
it.
wrong. I don't know.
I don't know. So thankfully, we only have to say his name like 40 times in this episode. So yeah, the ambassadors are also looking for a foothold in Brockton Bay. And of course, we remember those as being not coil. I always want to say coil instead of accord. I don't know why.
Because they're so close to being like each other, kind of.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, they're buddies.
Yeah, they are buddies. It's Accord's team that they're looking for a foothold in Brockton Bay, and Gru and Skitter are willing to consider their offer. Another villain group called the Teeth is in Perian's territory, and she's apparently not asking for help. Overall, this little section where we learn about all the movements of Cape groups into the city gives the impression that some time has passed.
Yeah, and it's setting up all our pieces. It's showing us what the situation is now, and I think what this does to me is kind of show like how precarious the Undersiders' hold of the city is getting. Like, Brockton Bay was trashed, and like everyone had left it, and the Undersiders were really the only group operating there. And now the city's coming back. Now the portal's here. The city's recovering. The city has a reason to exist. And as the city grows back to its former glory and maybe surpasses it, other people are going to come. And suddenly this ability to hold territory that they had becomes more and more complicated. And it seems in this moment that conflict is almost inevitable.
Yeah. Speaking of the recovery, I think one of the things that most clearly indicates that the city's recovering is that they're moving protectorate capes back in, when all the wards were complaining about how, they're just not, we're losing people and they're not refilling the spots. And I think they're just giving up. And now it's clear that they're not. And that there's a point much later where the reporter rattles off a list of protectorate cape names, and we don't recognize a lot of them. So it suggests just how many people have come back.
Well, I mean, that just goes to show you that this thing that Lisa did that saved the city might have doomed their control over it, because suddenly things are a lot harder to do. And yes, they've got a good foothold on everything, but it's all up to these kids, and it's just trouble. There's trouble brewing.
Yeah. So yeah, Skitter comes. She's gone to her lair, and she comes downstairs from dressing in her costume, and she finds that Charlotte has brought a new prospective employee into the lair without properly vetting her, and she's kind of irritated about that. We also learn here that Forrest is the dude that's helping out in her lair, and he's the same guy who helped smash Mannequin's head.
Thanks, Forrest. Thanks. That was a Forrest Gump joke, except I messed up the timing. I'm going to delete this.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. No, yeah. I mean, I like this guy a lot. I liked him when he stepped in to help with Mannequin, and I'm glad to see he's making himself useful.
Yeah. Here, there's Charlotte telling her about how people are complaining about like garbage stink and various other things. And she says, Skitter says, I'll resolve it. And then she thinks to herself, it wasn't so long ago this whole city stank and people weren't complaining this much then. And this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about before.
I know, it was just a couple days ago how maintaining order and control as the city returns to itself is hard to do, because when people are desperate, they will turn to you if you are providing them with things they need. But as that desperation goes down, their happiness with your rule goes down as well.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like what the Roman emperors always had to deal with.
Yep.
Throw those circuses, Taylor. After this pleasant interlude of dealing with these minor domestic issues, Skitter heads to deal with the trouble that she heard about before on the text messages. The O'Dailys, Scott, are now working as her enforcers, apparently.
Yes, the O'Daily clan is well known for their resourcefulness and ability to follow orders. Also, we're tall and big.
Yeah. Well,
so there you go.
It's good. I'm glad you're helping.
Thanks for writing me into the book, Wildbow. 4 years in the past.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's what it is. Precog right there.
There you go.
So there's a Japanese Christian couple who was victimized by these captured thugs that are in the kind of the Skitter territory stockades. And the Japanese couple ask for leniency against these crooks. Skitter argues that it would really be much better for her if she could torture and terrorize them the way she planned to. And I really like this exchange where Skitter's saying, and if they go free, if the police decide there's not enough evidence, or the officers are too busy to give your case their full attention, and these three get to go on and hurt others. And then the man responds, if that's the cost of having a system that otherwise works.
I love you, random Japanese Christian man. I do love this opinion, though. I really do, and I think this is meant to rather succinctly challenge Taylor's view on how to rule, and the idea that some, like, no system is perfect. Sometimes the system will fail you. That is going to happen, and we can try to have conversations and make changes to make sure that failure doesn't happen again. But just because that does happen, it doesn't mean you abandon the system for one that not only results in but almost requires cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah,
which is what we're gonna see here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a great moment because it just shows, like, this is how a normal person reacts when, like, mafia justice is offered to them. You're just like, no, thank you. I don't want to be involved with this at all, actually.
Yeah. Can't you just bring them to the authorities?
Yeah. Right.
I am the authority.
Yeah. Yeah. she says completely, without realizing the irony of the situation.
Irony of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So she tells the thugs to go turn themselves into the police, and then she lets them go. And of course, they head the wrong direction trying to escape, which of course she senses. So she has her new bullet ants bite them, which obviously causes them to collapse in pain. And then she catches up with them and she clarifies her instructions. And after she has unnecessarily bitten them with these excruciatingly painful bullet ants several more times, the Christian man, it says, he was still staring at me, his question lingering. I asked you to be lenient. I was all I said. Hey, Matt,
let's talk about this for a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to go hard on this.
Yeah.
This is literal torture. This is wrong. This is unequivocally, absolutely, 100% wrong. This is not how a person should behave. And I almost think that I'm not just the one saying this. I think the story is saying this. And I don't think we're supposed to be supporting Taylor's decision here. I don't think so. She can't even be bothered to argue why she's right here. She says, I could explain to him how blah, 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 but I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
It's just like, Taylor, you are torturing people.
Yeah. I'm just going to give a badass one-liner and walk away because, yeah.
Right.
I mean, it like, to me, you can actually draw a parallel to like police brutality, and, like, you could loosely argue that maybe a bullet ant bite is similar to like a taser strike, although I think a bullet ant is probably much worse.
Yeah.
And then this is like giving someone several consecutive taser strikes once they're already on the ground, which is just clearly unacceptable use of force from law enforcement, which is kind of what she's trying to be. Yeah. So she's really just trying to like terrorize. That's exactly what she's doing. She's trying to amp up this reputation of being someone you just don't cross. And it has nothing to do with the people that were hurt. It has nothing to do with the people that did the hurting. It is all about projecting an image of herself. It's all about her. Yeah. That's what this decision is made for. And look, you can't, like, these men were in captivity. They were captured. It's not like she was trying to capture them and they fought back and then she had to fight them to bring them down. They were in a jail cell. She let them out and then basically laid a trap for them because she knew what they were going to do. Like, there are 1,000 other things Skitter could have done to take these guys to the authorities. I mean, she could have surrounded them in a mass of bugs that like pushed them in the right direction without stinging them with unknown bullet ants. This was to make a point. This was not only to make a point to everyone else in the city, but this was almost to make a point to this guy because this guy said, no, you should be lenient. Your system isn't the right one. Go to the cops, go to the authority. And she's like, I'm going to make a point to you by showing that these people would just run away. And the only way to teach them is to torture them. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because she says I was being lenient, and it's like, do you really think
what does that mean?
You were being lenient? Like what? Like, were you going to kill him, Taylor? I don't. Right. I'm not sure I'm not sure if she was just trying to be intimidating there or if she really thought that was a lenient response. I think she thinks
I think she's definitely trying to be intimidating, but I do think that she thinks it was a fair and justified response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting, especially in context of how we see her behaving at the end of this arc.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that when we get there. So yeah, she now she knows that she kind of is going to have to get ready to see her dad in the relatively near future. So she changes back into her tailor clothes, and then she gets a text from Charlotte. Big trouble at school. Somebody looking for Taylor and maybe looking for Skitter too.
Fucking Greg.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this when we get to him, but I just want to remember that this is a very conscious decision that Taylor makes to go to school.
Yeah.
And she makes that decision, and she makes it knowingly. So let's keep that in mind as we go through everything that happens.
Yeah, we're going to hit that beat. So 20.2, Taylor realizes that all of her more actually helpful allies are tied up at the moment, so she'll have to go on her own. We also learn that the high school has a Faraday cage around it, which is both a realistic detail and also comes into play later. So anyway, it's clear that she's going to have to deal with this by herself.
Matt, can I just say before we move on how excited I was for this moment?
Of course.
Because we know Greg is there, who knows who she is. We know Emma is there, who we just learned all about, and how excited she is to be in this position of power back at a school. What I thought was going to go down in the school and what actually goes down are very different, but I was still glued to my screen this entire time. This is so wonderfully set up, and you're just ready for the shoe to drop and things to go nuts, and they do in a different way, but I was so excited.
There's just so much tension, along so many different vectors, and we're going to get to all that in 20.5, how so many, long awaited explosions go off at the same time. But you're becoming more and more aware of the tension as she's brushing up against these situations that you're really anxious about. Yeah. Yeah. So she lets her hair down a bit as she rides a city bus to school. And this is actually an interesting moment. This is a very, very rare moment of Taylor just taking a breather. But as she approaches the school, she thinks to herself, her usual litany of, I've faced down a handful of the scariest sons of bitches in the world. I've been intentionally trapped in a burning house, blinded, had my back broken. I've been paralyzed and at the mercy of no less than 2 lunatic tinkers. And I've killed a man, I thought. And going back to school stirs up old feelings of anxiety. And I like this because, this is just completely realistic, because your brain doesn't really know that you're like an adult or whatever, or like a different person, a more mature and capable person than you were the last time you were in this situation. It just recognizes the place or the context of the trauma that it experienced, and it triggers that fear reaction because your brain doesn't know any better.
Yeah, it is. It's great, and it's a perfect way of showing that exactly that for all her growth, for all this newfound strength in her, Taylor's trauma still rules a huge part of her life. That she can stick that away in that compartment all she wants, but it's still there, just hanging out, waiting to go back to school. Yeah.
She hasn't solved that at all. In fact, you could argue she's been driven by it this whole time.
Yeah.
So as she approaches the school, she subconsciously identifies 2 distinct groups of students. Some are pretty much typical high school students, but the other group are clearly those who stayed in the city during the recent endless series of disasters.
Yeah, this is a really great beat that's going to pay off fantastic later, but at least at the moment, it represents perfectly this kind of large-scale representation of the differences between Taylor and Emma, with a group of Taylors and Emmas, and how they naturally segregate and how that conflict is going to boil over. Yeah,
that's an interesting way of framing it. I like that. So she has to give up her knife to the enforcer at the gate, and then she heads in. We're obliquely reminded that this isn't actually her high school. She went to a different high school. This is the high school where she crashed the party that Jack and Panacea were having.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was a rusted, destroyed, red-tinged horror movie set. Yeah. So as she's heading in, she sees these "Know Where You Are" fact sheets that we've actually seen before, and she sees on one of them the paper the paper with the graffiti was Rachel's. A crude drawing of a dog was violating one corner, which had been torn slightly to accommodate the dog. a speech balloon over the smiling dog's head read, "You don't know shit." And just, God, I love this detail. Because Taylor thinks about how she recalls always having a sense of the local gangs and like who to fear. And now she's the local gangs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like, we know this is not her school, but here's that moment of everything coming full circle again. That in arc 20, we're returning to the beginning of the book. We're returning to arc 1. We're back at school. We're back at some of the first characters in the story. But this time, everything's different. It's like we're living in an alternate universe or something.
Yeah.
Where she's on the other side of the food chain. And it's really fulfilling narratively to be placed in basically the same setting. I mean, I know it's not the same school, but it's close enough to being the same setting that we might as well just call it the same setting. Yeah. And seeing how different things are.
Yeah, you're right. So we're getting some of these very subtle beats regarding kind of the differences in the students, and a group of students watches her pass, and one of them gives her an inscrutable Tyler Durden nod. We're not really sure yet what to make of this.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I think these people recognize each other. They know each other. They can tell who is the survivors and who is not. Mm-hmm. And there's this sense of camaraderie amongst them that pays off at the end of 20.5.
Yeah, and I guess you probably do get that at that point, because she's already identified the two groups as being what they are. But Taylor, I think, is still a little bit confused and doesn't really understand like why these people are watching her the way they are. Yeah,
they're just staring at her, and she actually nods to this person first, and they nod back in that kind of knowing way. But yeah, there's this real sense of, first of all, she's nervous because she's terrified of her identity being revealed, but there's also these people know each other. There's been amongst the survivors of the city, there's been kind of a collective that's formed, and I think you can extrapolate that kind of we've earned this mentality. Like, we've gone through this, we understand each other, we're a group, and everyone else is foreign to us, amongst the people with powers and the people that had powers via their actual traumas versus the people that bought them. There's a common thread there that we see, that people who feel like they've gone through something together kind of coalesce around each other and are kind of shun the people that they don't feel have earned that same thing.
That's a really interesting connection between those two things that I hadn't thought of. But yeah, you definitely see the same level of like almost disgust from the kind of more natural capes against the Cauldron capes, and you see the same way that the people who stayed in Brockton Bay are like, hey, we're all in this together with this shared trauma, and we have a hard time relating to you other folks. Right. That's interesting. Yeah, so she tries to go to the front office to get a sense of where Greg might be. Protectorate capes Adamant and Seer are there, and she almost immediately starts thinking about how to fight them.
That's a totally normal thing to do. And it's moments like these that you can almost feel her power, her passenger like itching to fight again, like conflict. We got to do this. Here's how you could do this. I think we see this reflected again in how she kind of struggles to maintain control in her Emma confrontation. And then we hit this beat very specifically in Accord's chapter later on, where we see him literally just in this constant sense of struggle to resist what his power is telling him to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, very early in the story, Taylor would have been like, oh, cool, like capes and their cool outfits. And now she's just like,
how can I win?
Yeah. How do I take these guys down? And she doesn't even need to. Like, there's no reason for her to assume she's going to have to fight them at this point.
Right. She's literally just there to confront Greg.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So she canvasses the school. She kind of gets the information she needs, but not really. So she ends up just canvassing the school, looking for Greg. She's avoiding using her bugs at this point because she doesn't want to attract attention with bugs that are moving weirdly. And then she does run across Emma once, noticing her new hairstyle immediately, but then she moves on.
Yeah, I'm so glad the hairstyle stuff was pointed out to us last week by Wildbow. I guess he was remembering this moment. Like Emma's hair as this ongoing symbol of the assault she suffered. And this is something that Taylor is so blissfully unaware of. She has no idea of this. But it was something that Taylor was always jealous of her for. And this is about to pay off, Matt, in the most amazing way ever. I love this beat.
I know. So Taylor finally finds Greg and corners him. And due to his kind of puppy dog like exuberance, she decides that she needs to kind of just steamroll him, accusing him of stalking her, stonewalling his insinuations about who she is. And she's pretty harsh. So like, Scott, don't you feel just a little bit sorry for Greg here? Because Taylor actually does. Because whatever else she is, it's not in her nature to kick a puppy. But she kicks the puppy anyway because she has to, or she feels that she does. And I can't help but compare this to Emma's behavior, where, like Emma, she's being cruel to somebody to protect herself at the risk of actually getting used to behaving that way.
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, I do feel bad for Greg here. I think what Wildbow did is that in order to build tension a little bit at the end of the Parahumans Online scene, there was some ambiguity regarding what Greg would do with the information that he had just stumbled upon. Was he going to use it against Taylor? Was he going to use it to try to manipulate her to get what he wants? The real truth is much less severe and much more sad. Greg does suck, but I feel bad for Greg.
Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you happy, Greg apologists?
Yeah.
Are you happy that I said that?
I think we should say that a lot of our vitriol toward Greg was a little bit amped up for the sake of humor. I mean, he sucks in the way that like many, including probably us 16-year-old guys suck.
Right.
So like a lot of that was just like poking fun at a target that was apparently designed to be an easy target.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like the entire point of a lot of that chapter is to show us just all the ways in which Greg behaves like an immature child, trying to play at something that he doesn't understand. And so that's easy to poke fun at. Yes, we were playing it up a little bit. I don't despise Greg more than like any of the evil, terrible characters who do really awful things in the story.
Yeah, right.
The thing I really noticed here, though, and I think the thing that really makes you feel bad for Greg is how differently the two of them are portrayed. Like, they're the same age, but this conversation feels like an adult punishing a child for their reckless behavior. Yeah. Like, she's like chastising and scolding him. And it goes to show us that contrast between those who stayed and those who left, that Taylor has lost her childhood. She is not a kid anymore because of her experiences. Greg, on the other hand, is still very much just a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So in the middle of their, interaction, some redhead boy, heroically intervenes, taking time out of his schedule to possibly bail Taylor out of a jam. Clocks.
Hey, sorry, Matt. I was just trying to check the time on my clock to make sure we weren't running late, but something was blocking it.
Oh,
so
no worries, Scott.
Yeah, let's just move on.
Yeah. So that kid, whoever that is, he leaves.
No idea.
Yeah. And Greg says something. I forget what he says exactly. I didn't write that down.
He basically just says how he discovered that Skitter was Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like this simple.
Right. Just like it was obvious.
Yeah.
and her response is, that was just about the most horrifying thing he could have said, barring near impossibilities like, I got powers and I ate your hair to get pregnant with your child. Which I laugh every time I get to that part.
Like, what? Why'd she go there? That's such a weird place to go.
I mean, a kid that touches people and sort of gets pregnant with copies of them.
I guess.
I just love it. It's just so comedic to me. Yeah. So she hammers home that she's definitely not Skitter, and she parts with this. You're not a bad guy, Greg, I said. Sorry, I'm not the person you wanted me to be. He nodded, mute. Take care of yourself. Good luck with school. Maybe I'll see you around.
Yeah, so this is a phrase that once again works on two levels, because on the surface level, sorry, I'm not the person you want me to be is just her lying. Like, I'm not Skitter. The second is more, I am not who you think I am. I am not the nerdy outcast that you felt you could so relate to. Mm-hmm. That is not the person I am anymore, Greg. And I love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. It's got a double meaning.
So before we move on from this thing, I just want to talk about something that we didn't actually write down, but we chatted about it in our daily conversations Skitter is acting kind of crazy here. Like, she's very reckless. And the idea that she learns that Greg might know who she is from a text message from Charlotte and then has to come rushing to school to talk him down and to convince him he's wrong. Like, from Greg's point of view, he mentioned something about Taylor and Skitter to a few people in class, and then suddenly Taylor, who doesn't go to school here, is here in his face saying, like, no, that's wrong. Why would you say that? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if things hadn't gone the way they go, you can almost imagine him, like, going home that night and being like, wait a minute.
Right. And I think it's because Greg is this kind of cowardly, insecure guy that Skitter is able to convince him. Like, I think any other person would be like, you know, you're being really defensive about this thing you're saying is not remotely true. I mean, you came all the way down here because one person told you I mentioned your name. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah, I think this is her character, is that she has to confront every problem head on with, like, overwhelmingly devastating force. She doesn't really do subtlety too well, actually.
Yeah.
I think is a fair thing to say. And this would be a situation that actually calls for subtlety. Like you would have been like Charlotte, you know, maybe get Charlotte to talk to him and find out why he thinks he knows that. Right. And then maybe approach him later out of school. I mean, I get why I get from within her head why she felt like it was urgent.
Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, if I were in this situation, not having her particular character, like, flaws, if you will, I would be more patient and so forth.
Yeah. And I bring this up only to say that we're about to get this Emma confrontation. And part of me thinks that on some possibly subconscious level, Taylor knew Emma was going to be here, and Taylor wanted to come to this school. She wanted a legitimate enough excuse to come to school and have this confrontation. She couldn't just go to school. Taylor's compartmentalization and her justification for things doesn't allow, I'm just going to go to school and be a student. But her first chance to do it, and she jumps on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think there might be something to that. Yeah, so as she leaves, having, you know, verbally roughed up Greg, she does indeed feel like Emma. And then she senses Emma, and she can either go the long way around and avoid her, or she can just go past her. And Scott, I think this ties into what you said earlier, but I want to point out that if Taylor had just gone the long way around, this arc could have gone very differently. A small choice, but meaningful. Yeah,
and I think that's another kind of confirmation that she wanted this confrontation. She wanted it. Like, she knew that Emma was here. There's that whole scene in the Emma chapter where Taylor sees Emma drive by. She knows she's back in town. So it's rightful to assume that on the first day of school, Emma will be here. And she wanted this just a little bit.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not, you know, she makes excuses for herself. I think we might as well say at this point that I think there's quite a bit of flagrant, unreliable narrator stuff going on when it comes to Taylor's own, like, motivations for things. Cause she's like, you know, whatever, I'm not going to be late to lunch with my dad because of Emma. And it's like, yeah, that's not really why you're going to go walk by her, because you know that this is going to lead to her confronting you.
Right.
Like, yeah.
I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to go the long way, which would have added a minute, 30 seconds.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So instead, when I give her the opportunity, I will follow Emma into the principal's office to report her.
Right.
Which we haven't even gotten there yet. But
right.
I mean,
Jesus. Exactly. Yeah. That too. Right. So yeah, Emma approaches her as soon as she shows up outside, predictably. And as we end this chapter, Taylor is thinking, there were few people in this world that had truly earned my hate. I'd put a bullet through the last one's brain. Emma, I couldn't care less about her. That was what unsettled me.
And this is, I think, when we're talking about these motivations, Matt, exactly what you said, this unreliable narrator thing, because this is total bullshit. Like there is every way she reacts from this point forward to the conversation, to what Emma's saying, to what Emma's doing, to Emma's mere presence says that I couldn't care less about her, is just false. It's just not true. And I'm not even sure what she's doing here. That idea that I guess she's just trying to frame the power struggle as if I am going to win this because I am so much above her that I don't even care about her anymore. But we very clearly see that that's not the entire truth.
Yeah, I think it's that she's compartmentalized away these emotions. There was a great comment yesterday or today, and it was about Alec and about how it's not that Alec doesn't have emotions. It's more like his emotions are not accessible to him. And I always think about the scene when he finds out about the bullying, and like in his head he's like, he didn't really feel angry about it, but like nonetheless he like sits there and like thoughtfully like slaps the phone against his palm or something, and it's like some part of Alec is actually seething about this. and it's causing him to decide, okay, I'm gonna fucking ruin your life now, Sofia. But he doesn't have access to the emotions. He just has access to the conclusion of what he's gonna do. And I think that's a lot like what's happening to Taylor right here, because she's like, her own feeling is like, I'm looking at Emma and I don't feel what I expect to feel. But that's not to say that you're like, she's actually like, her behavior in this scene is extremely confrontational. This upcoming scene, extremely confrontational, direct, combative, aggressive. And she's like, but to herself, she's couching it all as like, I don't care about you. I don't care about this. This is nothing to me. And it's all just completely, like you said, bullshit.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely great and accurate. And yeah, the Alec thing was a great comparison.
Yeah.
We need to stop saying he doesn't have emotions. I agree, because I think we're using that as like a shorthand to describe what's going on with him, but it's not entirely accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. So we go into 20.3. And immediately we have this conflict happen, and Emma opens up with, change your look. I have to say, you managed to make any style look great. The sarcasm was subtle. There was also a glimmer of a memory in there. She was referencing something. I brushed it aside. I doubted I wanted to think too hard on it. Scott, this earnest compliment that Taylor made in passing like a year ago has been eating away at Emma all this time. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is like a 1,000,000-word long setup. Like, this is like just a nothing comment that Taylor made where she was just literally trying to be nice to her friend. And it just pays off in the most spectacular way. It's like the first thing Emma says to her. It's just like, it was ripping apart her insides.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Emma's like, this'll really stick it to her. And Taylor's like, is she referencing something?
Did I say something?
Yeah. Yeah, and this time it's really hard for Taylor to hold those bugs back. She has to actively restrain them, like they're fighting her. Her imagination keeps serving up delicious images of revenge and of Emma in terror, which reminds me of a character from later in this arc.
Yeah, and she could totally care less about it, right? That's 100% what's happening here.
Yeah.
People that you don't even care about often cause you to get so angry that your power almost takes control of your impulses. That's a thing that happens.
Yeah, happens to me all the time. So Taylor does stand up to Emma here, and she verbally unleashes on her since she can't attack her physically. And generally she's semi-accidentally taking just the perfect tack to undermine Emma's whole coping mechanism.
Yeah, and I think that moment is honestly what takes this scene and really elevates it from just a good confrontation to great. Because had Emma's interlude not been in the story at all, I still think this would have largely worked as a scene, but because of that interlude, because of that additional characterization that we got, and Wildbow's toying with dramatic irony again here, this whole scene is operating on like 3 different levels at the same time. So we're seeing Taylor and what she thinks she's doing, we're seeing Emma and what she knows, and then we're seeing the external interplay between the two of them, and it's like each of them are fighting each other while also fighting with their own internal demons, and it's just so wonderful. Yeah,
right. I mean, that's a good point that there's a level on which, like, if you're one of the bystanders watching this scene, you have no clue what is going on in these two people's heads. You really just see two girls yelling at each other and getting extremely angry. So the swarm is actually working its way toward her whenever her attention drifts away, which is pretty bad. So yeah, like now seems like a good time to point out that Taylor has not really had to restrain herself from hurting somebody, like any use of violence, basically since she left school in the first place. And now that she's finally trying to hold it back, she finds it much harder. Remind anybody of Noelle, for example?
Such a good point, Matt. Restraint has not been in Taylor's vocabulary for a while now. And every time she doesn't hold back, she's kind of rewarded for it. So you get that kind of positive response loop where every time you use violence, it solves your problem. And it's like the passengers starting to assert its power, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I mean, I'm just thinking of all these little micro events, like when she kicked Barker's ass for almost no reason, or how she treated these thugs just earlier in this arc. It's like, if she had tried to restrain herself, I bet she would have felt that little nudge. Really?
Yeah.
You really want to restrain yourself here?
Almost as if these moments where we like call out how Taylor's acting aggressive and recklessly are like intentional, and we're supposed to be a little worried about them because they add up to something.
No,
almost.
You're crazy, Scott.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Emma's response to Taylor's, verbal assault actually like practically makes no sense, unless you understand what's going on in her head, because apparently in Emma's mind, all Taylor ever needed to do was stand up for herself and demonstrate herself as a predator, or at least non-prey. And then everything would have been just peachy. Everything could have gone back to normal.
Yeah, but this is as bullshit as Taylor's "I don't care about Emma" line.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense as far as the bullshit Sofia philosophy is concerned, but like, all Taylor standing up to herself would have done would be to threaten Emma's life philosophy even more. Like, Taylor became a victim when her mother died, and any amount of strength that she's shown would have threatened Emma's warped coping mechanism. Ergo, she probably would have just pushed harder against her. It's just not true at all.
Yeah, I mean, this right here, Emma, is Taylor standing up to you.
Yeah, and you're not taking it well.
Right, you're not exactly like best buds now. Yeah, and so yeah, Taylor almost surgically refutes this by correctly identifying Sofia as the source of this toxic meme and explaining that Sofia was always just a violent thug and nothing more.
I hit her where it hurts.
And then Emma plays her, what's that card game where you destroy other people's lives?
That's the President Trump card.
Oh yeah, she plays that card, and she tells Taylor that her mom's car crash was specifically due to Taylor's failure to call her mom when she was supposed to, and furthermore that Danny blames Taylor for her mom's death.
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat my gut reaction that I tweeted out when I heard this, which was basically, no, you fucking did not just do that, Emma.
Yeah, right. I mean, I like to imagine what like the bystanders are thinking, where they're just like, this person is insane. Like that's such a horrible thing. Like I think you can get the like Sofia, because she was so screwed up, would have been like, oh, good one, Emma. But like these normal bystanders would be like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like what the fuck? It's
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, this definitely does get to Taylor, because she sees a grain of truth in it. But she also understands what this is. She's compared Tattletale to Emma often enough to understand this tactic, because it could be true. It could be an educated guess. In any case, there's nothing to be gained from taking the bait here.
Matt, this is such a wonderfully complicated arc. Like we said, we're seeing everything come full circle. We're seeing old plot threads tied off. We're seeing examples of Taylor being that same traumatized teenage girl that she's been since the beginning of the book. But it's not just that. We're seeing her moments of growth too. We're seeing how she has changed, because Taylor very clearly can care less about Emma. She very much still cares about her. She very much still hates her on some level. And she probably always will on some level. But also, Taylor is strong, and Emma and the things that Emma cares about are beneath her now. So yeah, she doesn't care. While she does care, she doesn't care enough to bother lowering herself to Emma's point in this moment. And it's really a fantastic beat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is all because like Taylor fundamentally doesn't understand how trauma works at all. I think she has a naive kind of perspective on it, which is somewhat understandable because she's so young. But she's like, well, I have no reason to care about Emma, thus I don't care about Emma. And that's not how brains work.
Yeah.
They don't work by reason.
Well, especially when you have this thing in your body that's like poking and prodding at your source of trauma and reinforcing it.
Yeah. Right.
That helps.
Yeah, that helps, yeah. So the argument is interrupted by Danny calling Taylor's phone, and she answers it, and Emma punches and shoves Taylor. And Taylor lets it happen because she can feel it coming, but she just lets it happen. And the gate guard who let her in grabs Emma and tells Taylor that she can leave if she wants, but there's only going to be justice if she comes along and testifies against Emma for doing this.
And this is so important in this moment. Because we've had a couple beats now where like Taylor's response to Emma, like, what are you doing? Why are you here? Taylor is just like, Emma, all I want to do is go have lunch with my dad. And now here, as things begin to escalate, as it turns to violence, Danny calls in almost as if to serve as a reminder to us and to Taylor of what she could potentially be giving up by continuing along this path, by staying here, by staying in this. Here's Danny. Danny's here. He's waiting for you, Taylor. And yet.
Yeah. Like, you could leave now. This is last chance. But no, Taylor chooses to accompany them to the principal's office. There goes your second window of escape. The guard orders 3 of the bystanders to come as well.
Yeah. And throughout this, until this point, nothing was stopping Taylor from having lunch with her father. Nothing. If that's really what she wanted to do, that's what she could be doing. She had multiple opportunities to leave. She had an opportunity to never come. We've already talked about how impractical it was to run down here and confront this head on. What happens to Taylor in these next few chapters is not her fault. But I think it's important to point out that it was of her own making, that she made decisions that led to this moment.
Yeah, and I don't think she's even fully aware. I agree with you that her motivations here are not what she thinks they are.
Yeah.
So once in the office, Principal Collins proves to be a no-nonsense and efficient administrator. The guard and 2 of the witnesses are firmly on Taylor's side, and this causes Taylor to immediately contemplate whether this is some kind of Cape shenanigans.
This whole scene, Matt, is just... Man, I love this. I love it so much. Like, I loved the scene. Was it Arc 4 that we had the big confronting Emma in front of the principal scene? I believe it was Arc 4, something like that. But this is mirroring that. It's Taylor and Emma in a room, a principal, accusations. But we're in Bizarro world now, and this time things are different. And it's so bewildering for Taylor and you're right, in us.
Yeah.
We're kind of almost blown back. We've never seen dealings with authority go Taylor's way in such an extreme way before in this whole book, and it's off-putting.
Yeah, I mean, it is comedic to me that she sort of can't let go of the idea that, like, let me think through all my potential enemies and which one of them could be doing this to me as a trick, because there's no way this is real.
This can't be real.
Yeah, because the principal is also pretty much immediately on Taylor's side, or at least not on Emma's, and she goes to great lengths to emphasize the stupidity of picking fights in the current Brockton Bay. They're talking about like knives, and Taylor admits to having a knife, and the principal asks, "Have you used it?" And Taylor says, "That one? No." Which is perfectly intimidating.
I assume sunglasses just went over her eyes and deal with it appeared along the bottom.
Yes, I think that's what happened. So the principal is finally able to pull up the lovely text message exchange between Sofia and Emma that Regent helpfully emailed to the city officials. And of course, Taylor assumes this was Sofia's doing, which we know is not true.
Yeah, the most amazing part of this is that we wait so long for Chekhov's text messages to come back that we've almost kind of forgotten about them. And at least, like, I know there are people that binge read this and maybe hadn't forgotten about them, but as we're reading it much slower, yet still faster than it was published, mind you, we we know they're there in the back of your head somewhere, and it's kind of there sneaking up on you all along, but you don't realize it until the moment, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, that.
Yeah. You're almost like, well, I guess that's just never going to come into play, but here it is. It's great. Principal Howell asks Taylor if she wants to press charges, and after thinking about it, Taylor says no, mainly because it would be a distraction and a risk to herself. So Howell kicks Emma out and tells her that she's basically expelled for the rest of the semester.
Yeah, and I made a connection here in my eternal quest to find connections between everything I read in stories. I made a connection to this interaction between the principal and Taylor in this moment to how Taylor handled that Japanese Christian couple earlier in the chapter, where the position of authority is asking the wronged person, do you want me to move forward with this? And the wronged person says no, and then something happens anyway. Yeah. And I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if that was done purposefully or not, but it does slightly mirror itself a little bit here, and I just wanted to call attention to that.
I think it is. I think it's highlighting Taylor's sort of lack of self-awareness with regards to, like, when I'm in the leadership position, it's different.
Yeah.
Because Howell is doing exactly what Taylor did here, but Taylor's like, why didn't you listen to me?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, after Emma leaves, it then becomes clear that Howell knew that Taylor was involved with the Undersiders in some way. I don't think it's implied that she knew Taylor as a Cape, just that her name is on a list of people that she's supposed to give a little bit of leeway to. So anyway, it's clearly all Tattletale's doing. So it is Cape shenanigans in a sense.
Yep.
And Taylor thinks, I felt numb, a little disgusted with how things had turned out, that the only reason this system seemed to be working was because it was already corrupt to a fundamental level. I could still feel some of the anger and irritation from the argument with Emma, the thrill of adrenaline. And my response to that is, yeah, it's corrupted, but it's corrupted by you, Taylor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But on the one hand, you do feel bad for her, right? Because, like, for a brief second, Taylor believed that these authority systems had finally worked in her favor, had finally done what they were supposed to do. And you could argue, and when I tweeted this on my first read through, someone responded that we don't learn, like, the principal does not learn Taylor's name until the very end of this arrangement. So, like, some of the punishment was already being dealt out. Some of the authority system supporting her was already happening, and perhaps the Emma situation would have gone almost the same without Taylor's influence. But that doesn't matter, because to Taylor, it was not the system that saved her at all. To Taylor, Tattletale's influence completely says that this system is corrupt, it doesn't work, and the only reason things went my way is because of the corruption of that system, because authority failed me again, and it was only the rebellion from that authority that saved me. And it just serves to reinforce that feeling and that behavior more and more.
Yeah, I think we even see, like, the moment when the principal becomes aware of what's going on, like she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble with my computer. And like, I read that as her being like reading, like basically figuring out like, oh, this is someone on the list. I need to give them some leeway. Yeah. Like, so I think everything up to that point, which was still going in Taylor's favor,
right,
as you say, was above board. But Taylor, like you said, also Taylor's not going to read it that way. She's going to read this as like, nope, as I expected, everything is corrupt and can't trust anybody.
Yep.
So yeah, Taylor walks out of this woman's office, and she has kind of a minor emotional breakdown right there in the office, and she collapses into a chair. Yeah.
That's the I couldn't care less about Emma Taylor collapsing in a chair and having an emotional breakdown. Yeah, and I notice once again that to steady herself, she disembodies and disconnects and goes into her bugs again, which is something she frequently does.
Yeah, but like, this is the girl who had somebody trying to saw her skull open with a circular saw, and she didn't collapse into a chair after that.
Yeah. It's funny how trauma and PTSD works, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. But even from this, she doesn't really get a reprieve, because almost immediately Howell communicates to her that somebody's coming for her, and she runs.
It's in the really cool way too, where she writes her address on the form down as like 911 Runaway Street and 9191 Escape Avenue. And it got me thinking, what if someone lives on 911 Escape Avenue? It must be really stressful.
Yeah. Like every time you go to the bank and you tell someone your address, the teller looks at you like, oh God, do I have to push the silent alarm now?
Are you robbing me?
Yeah, right. So, okay, 20.4. Taylor is now fleeing, but she's stopped from actually running. So she starts trying to leave as quickly as possible, though, using her bugs in a subtle but less subtle than before way to prepare her escape.
Yeah, Matt, this chapter's a little weird. Because 20.3 was filled with like a lot of really juicy thematic stuff to talk about. 20.5 is like chock full of that stuff, and we're probably going to spend an hour on that chapter alone. And like you said when we were talking about this earlier, this is kind of a connective tissue chapter. Just really a series of events just get us from one of these things to the other. It's not bad. I quite enjoy it a lot. It's just it's our action chapter kind of. So there's not a whole lot of really insightful stuff to say about it. So I'm going to jump in where I can, but there's just not a lot. Yeah,
I mean, I think this is largely the combat chapter out of this entire arc because she's running. You know, she doesn't know anything actually at this point. She knows someone is after her. She doesn't know who. She doesn't know where they are. She doesn't know anything. But eventually, her bugs find Adamant and Seer apparently on the move, and she reasons from this that the Protectorate is after her. So Howell is forced to put the school on lockdown. And this means Taylor's options for escape are disappearing. She tracks 2 boys leaving their classrooms and getting dressed in their costumes, and she recognizes the costumes as Clockblocker and Kid Win.
Wait, so, Clockblocker was here? I didn't know that.
I guess he goes to this school, Scott.
When did he get there?
That's really cool detail. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. So her range does extend outside the building, so she gathers enough bugs for a swarm clone, and then Seer intercepts it. Taylor is kind of rounded up with other students, and she's brought to the cafeteria with those students, and she goes along with it basically just to stay under the radar for now. She hunkers down near Charlotte while her swarm clones try to deal with Seer, and her other bugs try to find a way out of the building.
Yeah, I will say that I do enjoy, this is our action chapter, right? This is our high tense, options are disappearing, we're having to make quick decisions, and for most of it, Taylor's just casually sitting in a lunch room on a table. Like, chatting. I love her power so much. It's just like all the stuff's happening. She's doing all this stuff while just like chilling with her henchmen. Yeah, right. So she notices a weakness in Seer's power, and she applies more pressure. And then she appraises Charlotte of the situation, but Char insists on staying by her side. Yeah, Charlotte is kind of awesome. I don't think we focus on her a lot. We tend to skip over some of her beats because we've got so much other stuff to talk about. But like she has done a lot for Skitter, and she asks for so little in return because it would make her feel bad to get more money. She's like loyal to a fault even under these high pressure situations. Like Taylor kind of stumbled into this great hench person. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, we don't talk about her enough. So Kid Win tries to head out the front door, and he gets owned by bugs pretty bad. Poor Kid Win. Oh, buddy. Try better next time, buddy. Yeah. He is always, like, on the losing side of things. Like, you gotta admit that like, if something bad goes wrong and Kid Win's there, it's gonna be probably happening to him. Yeah, well, he's the lovable doofus of the wards. Yeah. So, Taylor still feels that if she gets out of the school, it'll be okay. So there's still hope here. There's still a crack of hope. They can't directly come after her in her civilian identity, right? So Charlotte is the one who points out that this whole situation doesn't make sense. Why come after her at school when she's surrounded by hostages? Yeah, that would break the rules, Matt. And I mean, what kind of person would break the rules? No one we know. So she has her bugs tie Seer up like an AT-AT and knock him over. Kid Win is also on the ground thrashing. And she lets him up strategically just so that he can open the door for her and let her bugs in. And then she like ties his hand to the door handle hilariously. and then she uses those same bugs to steal some keys from a school guard. Hey, remember that first time that Taylor used her bugs to steal a key and get out of being locked up in a hospital bed? Mm-hmm. And how much that was like a huge ordeal that took all of her focus and attention? Now she's doing it while at the same time fighting capes with other bugs. Yep, just chilling. Yep. So she stands and she makes to leave the cafeteria. And then, like you say, Charlotte's like, oh, that's it? She's like, yep, that's it.
And she's already thinking about Image, projecting confidence as she walks away. Her bugs are currently working to bring the door keys to her via an air vent.
And today will forever be known as the day you almost caught Captain Jack Taylor Sparrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the first time you read this, you're like, yes, yes, yes. You know, like you're like, oh, I remember being so like you said, like glued to the screen. You're just like, okay, she's going to make it. She's going to make it. And then whomp, just as she reaches the door, somebody giant lands outside and rips open the door, and his weapon, which we of course recognize, stuns all of her bugs. And she also senses another heavy suit land across campus. So we know who this is. And the chapter ends with Skitter. Dragon answered me loud enough for everyone to hear. Her voice was almost gentle. I'm sorry it worked out this way. My hand was forced. And
there it is. There's Taylor is revealed as Skitter. And we learned that Dragon figured out Taylor's identity in arc 10. 10 arcs ago, like hundreds of thousands of words ago. Long enough ago that I completely forgot that that's a thing that Dragon knew. And here it is. Full circle indeed, huh?
Yep. It's God, this arc.
Yep.
Yeah. So we move on into 20.5, which is the chapter. The big one. Taylor backs away from the heroes toward the students, and they don't pursue her, but they do wipe out her bugs. Taylor can see Emma from where she is and sees that she's basically in shock.
Yeah, and so this is the start of a 20.5 Emma 3 beat that is some of the most amazing like B-plot storytelling I've ever seen, because we know what Emma's worldview is, and we know that everything she believed in, everything she thought of has been absolutely shattered by this revelation. Every single bit of that coping mechanism, that character that she created to basically survive, is gone now, because Skitter, Taylor, this person that she thought was a victim, a weakling, is the fucking warlord of Brockton Bay.
Yeah, right. She couldn't, things couldn't be more upside down for her, and she's just reeling.
And the text doesn't like focus on it. It just kind of flashes to it, and you just see it, and you have to kind of fill in the blanks in that. And that's how every one of these beats in this 3-beat go, that you have to fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, we don't get like this is what's going on in Emma's head, like you know, explanation. It's just like,
right.
hey, figure it out. Like you saw what's going on with her. You get it.
Yeah.
And I love that. So Taylor's got almost no bugs. 5 capes are against her. No costume or weapons. There was almost something relieving about the idea that things couldn't get much worse than they were right now. Let the tension drain out. If they decide to drag me off to jail or the birdcage, there wasn't anything I could do about it.
Yeah, that sure is refreshing, isn't it? I'm doomed. Hooray.
Yeah.
There is a little thread here I want to pull at as we go through this, and I'm not sure how much it's textually supported and how much is just me pulling things out of the air, but there's a few beats in here that once Taylor's identity has been exposed, that on some level, maybe some conscious level, she kind of wants to be caught, just a little bit. And I just want to point those little tiny things out when we get to them. And I'm not sure how much it's supported, and I'm not sure how much of it is true, but that's something that just jumped out at me.
Yeah, I don't think that's something that occurred to me, but like once you pointed it out, I definitely think that there's a valid reading to be had there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So Taylor confirms who she is to the room. She is Skitter. She reminds Dragon that this move won't look good. Skitter fought alongside the heroes against major threats, and in return, they're breaking the code.
Yeah, and there's so much dramatic irony going on here, because of course it's Dragon in this moment, and of course that Dragon responds that she had no choice, and Taylor kind of chastises her for that. Like, she's like, you always have a choice. Like, you could have chosen not to ally yourself with these people. And of course we know that is literally not true, that she is an AI that literally has to follow orders. But Taylor is high-roading her while not fully understanding the situation.
Yeah, and we've seen Dragon struggle with this repeatedly. Even when we were in her head, we saw that she was angry about the fact that she had to follow these orders. We saw Murden give her shit for exactly the same thing back in Traveler's Arc. Yeah. So this is something that's also been set up, and I don't know. Is this gonna resolve here? I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah. So Skitter threatens to reveal the secrets that she knows, but Dragon tells her that it's not in her to do that. Skitter responds by giving her usual litany of the sins that she feels bad for, or at least the ones that look the worst. And this includes an implication that she's currently harming Seer.
Yeah. This is another beat, Matt, that makes me pull at that string a little bit, that Taylor wants to be caught, because, like, I know that her listing her sins here is all about intimidation and projecting that image, but part of it feels like a confession, like she's laying her sins bare for the world to see and asking to be judged. And let's not forget that in these moments that as she's projecting this image of herself and she's laying these sins out here, she's mentally comparing herself to Jack Slash and to Bakuda, these people that she learned this method of being from. And it's almost as if she's like demanding, judge me, people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is fair. And she says, you put me in a room with 300 people that I could theoretically take hostage. Why? You can't be that confident that I wouldn't hurt someone. Emma was sitting to my right. She hadn't budged from her position, safe in the midst of several of the school's staff. I directed a centipede to crawl across her hand, and she shrieked. In her haste to get up from the bench, she fell. So I really wanted to point this out, and I've wanted to talk about this for a long time, because this is, like, she just couldn't hold back. Like, we almost got out of this whole situation without Taylor ever once using her powers against Emma. And we just didn't quite make it.
Yeah. And ironically, out of all the time that Taylor could have chosen to use her powers on her, this is probably the one that had the most devastating effect on her.
Yeah.
Because this is, in this moment, this is where Emma is at her lowest, where her entire worldview has been shattered. And then Taylor chooses now to fuck with her bugs.
Yeah. And not even because she wants to hurt Emma. She's just using her as like a distraction in the course of dealing with actually threatening people.
Right.
She's completely like belittling, actually.
Yep. But yeah, our second beat, by the way.
Yeah. But I think it's important. because it would show Taylor's restraint if she got out of this whole situation and she never used her powers on Emma, even though she had an excuse to.
Yeah.
And she cannot say that she did that. She did not demonstrate restraint. She failed to.
Yeah. And that's the one line throughout all of her dealings with her bullies that she said she would never cross.
Yeah.
That as mean as they are to me, as terrible as they are to me, I cannot use my powers on them. I cannot let other people use their powers on them. That is wrong. I will not cross that line. And she does it here so casually. Like, it's not even about Emma in that moment. It's not even about the revenge. It's just, I mean, it's a little bit there, but that's not the primary motivation for it. Yeah. She's just using her to make an example.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I feel like I'm harping too much, but I think this is an important, tiny little moment.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
So Dragon and Defiant explain that they don't like the plan, but they're acting under orders from the PRT higher-ups. And they keep trying to coax Taylor out of the cafeteria to talk in private, but Taylor views the audience as a form of security, a threat against the heroes' reputations. To this, Defiant replies, my reputation isn't a priority. He said. Dragon nodded, but I wasn't sure if it was approval or agreement.
I love these little moments between them.
Yeah, right. Dragon's like, that's right, Colin. That's right. And I love this. This is another. This is just so packed full of things like this that I just want to quote the whole thing. But she's thinking, one of the worst possible things had just happened to me, with my secret identity becoming public knowledge. And here I was, unarmed, without a single idea on how to get out of this, and the good guys were playing it safe. I smiled. I couldn't help it. Fuck me, Clockblocker muttered to Dragon. I might not have made it out his words if it weren't for the bugs I'd planted on the heroine. It just sunk in. It's really her. Why only just now? So let's talk about why only just now, because I have my ideas.
Okay.
So this reminds me of when Noelle told Chitter, the clone, Trickster said you thrive on this type of impossible fight, and the clone smiles. it's something that we don't really see because we're in Taylor's head and she doesn't give us the most objective point of view sometimes. But from the outside, yeah, you can imagine that this crazy cocksure eagerness for a scrap would be something that actually registers with her enemies as like, this is Skitter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right here. Because when Clockblocker looks at Taylor in this moment, he can't see Skitter. He just sees this teenage girl, not this terrifying, monstrous villain personality that she presents to everyone. But then that smile, that glee in the face of insurmountable odds, that is Skitter. And he sees that, and it all clicks into place for him.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right there.
And crucially, Taylor doesn't get it. She doesn't.
Yeah.
So out of the blue here, Defiant apologizes for his past mistakes.
We've used that phrase, coming full circle, like so many times this week, but here's another one. Armsmaster was the first cape that Taylor encountered in real life. It was the first one. The first good guy cape, I guess we should say, the first hero.
Yeah.
And his behavior set the tone for how Taylor perceived superheroes from this point going forward. There was Armsmaster first, and then later Sofia. It was these people, it was their behavior that convinced Taylor that striving to be a superhero was not the things that she wanted. And now we come full circle with Armsmaster coming to her and proving that, he fucked up. He didn't do right. He wasn't a good person in these moments. And it's kind of this you're putting chinks in her worldview, in this view of everyone on this bad guy team is bad because these people are terrible on it. And Taylor, it's a little more complicated than that. And that's what this apology does. And it's just this magnificent circle from the first moment where she walked up and talked to Armsmaster, and we got this image of him as this cocksure asshole. And now we have that cocksure asshole apologizing and saying, I fucked up.
Yeah, it's forcing her to imagine him complexly. And she doesn't like to do that. She likes to make people into her enemies, or her friends, and just deal with it. Be efficient and straightforward. And here he's working his way out of that compartment. He's saying, "Hey, I'm a complex human being, and I made a mistake, and I apologize."
Yep.
So it bothers her. But she does point out that this apology doesn't make sense in context of doing this much worse thing to her that they're doing right now by revealing her identity. So they reveal finally that this is all part of instructions from a precog. And as soon as she hears this, she understands that it's Dinah.
So yeah, this, there's moments in reading where, like, even if you don't like predict the reveal, you kind of see you're ramping up to a reveal, and you can kind of see what the reveal is going to be. This was not one of them for me. This hit me like I wasn't expecting this. I did not see it coming. I was shocked, and I was like, holy shit. Like it was a real holy shit moment for me. And it's a holy shit moment that like immediately makes all this other behavior click into place, because like Dragon also says stuff like how do you know I'm not going to reveal your secrets? And Dragon says you won't. And she's speaking like she knows. And it's like, of course, there was a precog. She knew. She literally did know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, this is just absolutely gutting at this moment, because you're with Taylor, and she's like, oh yeah, she still got it. She can still figure this out. I don't know how she's gonna do it, but she's gonna figure it out. And then when the Dinah thing happens, it just takes the wind out of her sails. And she's just completely deflated. And she asks, even though she already knows, was Dinah forced to give up this information? And Armsmaster implies that no, she wasn't forced.
Yeah.
And Dragon volunteers for some reason that there's a 96.8% chance that they'll successfully bring her into custody, and that violence has a less than 1% chance of succeeding. To which I respond, why would you tell her that, Dragon? Now she knows that the answer, if there is one, involves nonviolence. So you immediately gave her the tools she needed to escape. God, you never tell your opponent about the nature of the precog trap.
Right. Stupid AIs can't think right.
I know.
But we do, like, I'm going to bang that full circle drum again here, Matt, because Dinah is Taylor's motivation for more than half this story. Rescuing this girl has been everything to her. Her sole purpose for most of the decisions that she's made has been to rescue Dinah. And now Dinah has betrayed her, or at least she perceives it as a betrayal. I'm not sure about what is actually going on here, but the important part is Taylor perceives it as a betrayal. And her world here has been turned upside down, and she's lost Taylor, she's lost Dinah, and so all she has left is Skitter. And that's why the next beat is perfect.
Yeah, because Taylor mentions that she doesn't care for the name Skitter.
Yeah, so she doesn't even like Skitter anymore. That's all that she has left, and she doesn't seem to like it anymore. And I know we're just talking about the name. Like, on the surface level, she's just saying, I don't like the name Skitter. But come on, like, how much have we talked about names in this story? How much have we talked about how names are part of your identity, are part of who you are? Taylor stumbled and bumbled into becoming this person, becoming Skitter. It was never a thing she set out to do. She rationalized, she justified, she compartmentalized her way into this identity. It wasn't really the one she wanted. And it was placed on her literally in that someone gave her the name, but she kind of just fell into this thing by choice after choice after choice. And I think in this moment she's like, I don't even like this.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, and that's perfectly fitting because Dinah, like, by this perceived betrayal, it's sort of a rejection of all of those things that she did to become Skitter. It's like, right. This was all for nothing. Right. If Dinah is going to do this to me. And I think that's really what gets to her is like, I did all these horrible things that I regret, and it's all for nothing, apparently.
Yep. But just because she doesn't like Skitter, doesn't mean she's not going to use her.
Yep. Because there she makes up her mind, and she calls out to the students. And here we have it. Stand if you side with me, I called out. I won't make any big speeches here. That's not who I am. I won't feed you lies or guilt you into this. It's your call. What had I expected? A handful of people, Charlotte included? A slow gathering build-up? Of the 300 or so students in the auditorium, nearly a third stood from the benches where they'd sat. As a mass, they migrated my way, gathering behind me. Charlotte stood just to my left, staring forward without making eye contact with me. Sorry, I have something in my eye. I have to... Oh my god.
No, it's a really beautiful moment. It really is. Like, these people have been knocked down. They've been kicked around. The heroes have failed them. The government has failed them. And Taylor exists outside of all that. And she exists in their eyes as one of the people that cared about her, that helped them. And so Taylor calls her swarm, and they come to her.
Yeah. I just comment on the writing. I don't know how many times I've read this chapter specifically, but I think that I've gotten choked up at this point every time, which is something, because usually if I reread something, I'm like, yeah, I know what's going to happen. It's not going to affect me the same way. But I just find this to be, I don't know, this works on me.
Yeah, no, I get that. There's episodes of some of my favorite TV that, and no matter how many times I've seen the episode, I will be emotionally devastated by the end of it.
Yeah.
So that's good writing. That it's not the reveal, it's not the newness of the emotion, it's the rawness of the emotion.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Love that. Yeah, so like you say, the mass of young Brochtonites swarms, I guess, around Taylor in solidarity. On the sidelines, Emma is repeating something over and over, but we don't hear it.
Yeah, and here's the end of our 3-beat, Matt. First we see her stunned in silence, then Skitter scares her with a bug, and now we leave her almost catatonic, rocking back and forth, chanting something. Broken.
Yeah.
That's Emma. This is what's happened to Emma.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think you do feel kind of bad for her in this moment.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's like everyone is fucked up in this world. Everyone has terrible stuff happening to them, and no one is getting the help they need for it. So, yeah, people do terrible things to each other all the time. But people do terrible things to each other in real life, too. And, you can hate them for it, and sometimes you should, but you can understand it too. You can understand where it came from, and you can pity them for the stuff that they've had to go through.
Yeah, totally. So the students move as a mass, and Taylor stays hidden in their midst. The heroes can't use their powers. They can't get to her without hurting the students. Someone hands her a sweatshirt with a hood to slip into, and the students use their bodies to impede the heroes when they try to move forward.
Matt, you are not putting enough bug imagery into your summary of this part. Like, they attack Armsmaster by climbing all over him, and she's like controlling a swarm of people now, Matt, and you just seem to be ignoring it for some reason.
No, yeah, I mean, you're right. The imagery of them like crawling up on the Armsmaster is a bit on the nose. Yeah.
And we see her surround herself with bugs constantly, and now she surrounds herself with people. They like surround her so thickly that people can't get through them anymore. It's just like so clearly supposed to be insect bug imagery. Like, it's amazing.
But there was that great comment from last week that we pulled out about how when she's hidden in her swarm, she feels safe and secure, but she's really just surrounded in herself. Her swarm is just an extension of herself. But
yeah, that's true.
These are all individuals. These are all people, and they all. And I mean, I guess I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but it says, these are all people with their own stories, their own reason for siding with her, their own personal tragedies, and she's not controlling them. They're deciding of their own free will that they want to support her, and that's why this gets me right in the solar plexus.
Yeah.
But so, and I like this moment here where she's telling them to go tackle Armsmaster, and she says, "He might not be a good guy," I murmured, "but he's a hero. Trust in that." And then she thinks to herself, or is it the other way around? That apology sat oddly with me.
Yeah, and for those of you not fluent in the language, sat oddly with me is Taylor speak for it worked on me, and I have now had a fundamental shift in how I think of someone, and I don't know what to do with that information.
Yeah. This is an unusual sensation. I feel like I'm forgiving someone.
I don't. What do I do?
Yeah.
How do I feel? How do I make this stop?
Yeah. I guess I should attack him. So Taylor realizes that each. Yeah. So we already hit that beat. Yeah. So there's just a tiny little minor thing here where she sees Dragon like explode all these extra parts of her rocket pack out of her body. And she thinks like either it was all crammed into her torso, which was impossible, or Defiant had tweaked it. And it's like, we know, like, it's actually probably both. So Taylor overhears part of the exchange between Defiant and Dragon here. Dragon appears to be planning to do something that Defiant isn't happy about. And then, right after this exchange, Dragon lands hard, and she doesn't move for a long time, and her hand is tremoring when she finally does. Matt,
did Dragon just disobey an order? Did that happen?
I don't know.
I think
that's
what happened. I don't know whether to be happy or terrified of that, but I will say that final shot of Defiant like resting his chin on the top of Dragon's head is this moment of like real, genuine affection between these two characters, and I just love it.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
We've definitely come to enjoy their nerdy little AI nerd romance.
Robot love is the most realistic love in Worm.
Yeah, I mean, she's the perfect person, right?
I mean, at least so far, their relationship is the one that seems to be the most successful in the story, at least of the ones we're directly presented with. I know people have families and relationships kind of off screen that we don't focus on, but
yeah, that's true. Yeah. So they leave the school. Once Taylor is far enough from the school, she tells her cohort to stop, and she doesn't know what to say to them. And it turns out she doesn't need to say anything because they tell her why in a chorus of mixed stories, all of them different.
So good.
And as they're telling her, they're telling her fragments of their stories. And I think it's very interesting from a writing perspective that we don't get an internal reaction from Taylor. She doesn't think, finally some gratitude. If only for a moment I allowed myself to feel like I had done the right thing. It overwhelms her and it overwhelms us.
Yeah, I can't even fully explain like how wonderful it is. And to all you Y butters out there, I kind of understand you a little bit when I read moments like this, because, you know, Taylor has done so much good, and here it is in front of us. We can't deny it, and you and I won't. I'll say again, though, that I don't think pointing out Taylor's sins really takes away from her successes, really takes away from that here's a group of people that she saved, she changed their lives, she helped them. But I think we do need to remember that she does have both. She has successes and she has sins, and who she will end up being when she gets out of this chrysalis will depend on how she weighs one against the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Well said. So she approaches her own neighborhood, and she nears her house, although her range is greatly extended. She doesn't understand why. She uses a butterfly to scout her house, and she finds it full of PRT officers. The butterfly lands on her dad and makes its way to her finger. "Taylor," he said. 6.5 city blocks away, I replied. "I'm sorry." The butterfly and I took off at the same time.
And I'm crying.
Yep. This chapter's got... So, okay, we've got betrayal by the girl she sacrificed everything for. We've got somewhat seemingly final resolution of the Emma dramatic irony plotline. We've got Taylor's identity finally blown after arcs and arcs of tension about it. We've got Taylor finally getting some credit for her heroic deeds. Dragon does something significant, which allows her to finally disobey orders, but seems to have some cost. Defiant apologizes, showing personal growth. Clockblocker gets it just a little bit more. And even as Taylor loses her identity and transforms into Skitter right in front of their eyes, it's the butterfly. The butterfly's got...
Matt? Ladies and gentlemen, I think Matt has had a joy-related stroke, and it's okay. He's fine. We will have healing capes here soon. But yes, this chapter has everything. And I think this goes back to the conversation we had at the beginning about, is this the end of a story? Is this the beginning of a story? And there's a lot of culmination here. You just read it all. But it's culmination of stuff, of story-long stuff, of things that have been part of Taylor this entire time. And we're tying off this old conflict, and we're starting a new beginning. We're leaving Taylor and Taylor's problems behind, and we're changing into something new. This Chrysalis, we're metamorphosizing I couldn't say that, into something new. And this at the end of this is the end of Taylor, and it's the start of a new beginning. And I think that just works so much better as the first chapter of a book than it does the last chapter of one.
Yes, I'm back. I've recovered. I agree. Yeah, we'll be able to finish. Don't worry. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I could talk about this chapter all day, and I think we actually did talk about this chapter all day. So
I think we did. Yeah, I think we literally were talking about it online all day.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. But we're gonna move on now to 20.x. Stan, the man in the van with the plan. This is
well done.
This is a reporter named Stan, and he is arriving at the school in the aftermath of Taylor's outing as a supervillain. We briefly get to know his news crew as they drag the equipment out of the van. I like the little moment where he spares a thought for poor Manzanera's, the guy from Channel 4 who Purity basically fed to Night and Fog.
Yeah, totally remember that being a thing that happened. I totally forgot about that. I'm sorry.
You're not going to be popular with the Brockton Bay news crews, Scott.
Apparently not.
Yeah. So they talk to Principal Howell briefly, and he tries to trade kind of future discretion against current access, asking for permission to come into the school and talk to students. And he later explicitly thinks about this as an attempt at guanxi. So even this one-off non-cape character has a well fleshed out life philosophy.
Yeah, we might never see this guy again. He might come back, he might not, but Wild Bill still takes the time to clearly define who this guy is and his life philosophy and how he makes decisions to do the things he does.
Yeah.
It's like even these bit characters get characterization.
Yeah. Yeah. He's clearly characterized like kind of careerist, very competent reporter. Yeah. But of course, Howell refuses, so they just snoop around outside the school and they try to find some students there. So he ends up getting the story from some kids, plus cell phone footage from which he buys for $20. And then we learn that the video has just enough juicy details to make the situation an absolute PR disaster for the Protectorate.
Hooray.
And then Sans people find Greg, who despondently gives them an interview also.
Still gotta be the center of attention, don't you, Greggy boy?
Yep. We love that guy. And then we cut to Sofia in prison, watching this all on TV. And she just can't handle it. The frustration boils over until she smashes the TV and is tackled by guards, leading to a genuine top 5 favorite line of the story. She screams something so incoherent that even she would have been hard-pressed to interpret it.
Yeah, I have nothing to add here other than that's a really great moment. And now we've seen both Sofia and Emma destroyed by this Taylor revelation.
Yep.
That seemingly goes against their entire life philosophy.
Yep. Then we cut to Danny, who's not taking this well. He's wondering if this is his fault. His friends try to be supportive, but they don't really have much to offer because in his mind, Taylor has already said goodbye. And
he's kind of right. I wonder if this is the last time we'll see Danny. Is this where the story's going to leave him defeated and feeling guilty? And I wanted to talk to you, Matt, about, we kind of hinted toward this at the beginning of the podcast, but how culpable is Danny? I mean, I think his guilt is definitely misplaced, but, you know, we did have a moment in the story and we kind of teased at it as it was a terrible way of doing it, but where Taylor is basically begging Danny to parent her. Like, tell me what to do and I will do it. You know, tell me what I can and can't do and I will listen to you. And Danny won't or can't do it. Not that it would have stopped her from becoming the person that she is, not that it would have stopped her from being Skitter, but, you know, Wild Bo asked us that question all those months ago about, is Danny a good parent or not? And I just wanted to revisit that.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to kind of just say that I've become more, I think, sympathetic toward Danny over time because, like, he had this horrible tragedy happen to him. Like, no one should ever have to deal with losing their spouse. And he reacted, you know, like realistically, like you can't really judge people for like, oh, you didn't handle the loss of your spouse with a whole lot of grace. It's like, oh, you know, shut up, you know, like that. Just it's a horrible thing. Just give the guy some some leeway. And yes, the fact that he maybe withdrew too much into himself and maybe did unavoidably hold Taylor responsible. We don't really know if that's true or not. Maybe that did leave Taylor the isolation that led to her becoming a supervillain, but like, you can't expect the guy to deal with the 1-2 punch of losing his spouse and then having his daughter become a secret supervillain and hiding that from him and him having no way of, like, it's not like she's doing heroin or something that, like,
yeah,
he could figure out if he was attentive, you know. It's like, it's a really rare and weird thing that has happened to her. So, I don't know. I'm fairly forgiving toward Danny just because it's like, well, how else could he have, like, what could he have really done better? I don't know. I don't know if you can expect him to do much better than he did, without, you know, basically him being like a superhero.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was kind of playing devil's advocate there for a sec, but I mean, I think this once again shows us another example in which normal society, like conventions and civilization rules, kind of break down in the existence of superpowers. That, like, there is no correct answer for how to parent a superhero, especially if you are not one yourself. So, like, I think you got to give Danny a little bit of a handicap in this whole thing. And there are moments where he's trying the best he could, and, you know, you can't plan for any of this. Like, the amount of trauma your kid goes through. And we saw this, I think we see this with Emma's parents too, right? That like they want her to get better, and they say like they're kind of trying to move past her trauma in a way that's like, get better, Emma. It's been a week, get better. And it's not, they're not being mean to her. They're not being dismissive of her. They just don't know what to do. They don't know how to help her. And I think that's the same with Danny and Taylor, that he doesn't know the right thing to do. And it seems like to him, every time he's tried to do something, it has backfired in such an incredible way. The last time he ordered his daughter around, she left and he didn't see her for like a month.
Yeah.
So like the idea of even as she's saying, no, you can tell me what to do. I might fight with you. I might push back against you, but I'm really going to do it. I don't think he can let himself believe that, because the risk there is losing her again, this time possibly forever.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. That's why he won't just be like, okay, then go to school, because now he's put himself in an antagonistic role to her, and fully expects that she will just, she might listen for a few days, but right. I don't think he believes that it's gonna hold up.
Yeah.
I think Danny's not in a good spot right now.
No. So
then we cut to the PRT conference room. Defiant is somewhat smugly telling the higher-ups that he told them so, and Dragon is present also, but she's mute and she's not really like acting correctly. So Pigot is our actual POV for this scene here, and she also seems pretty frustrated with how things have gone. Director Tag is now the one who's in charge in Brockton Bay, and he seems a tad less circumspect than even Pigot was. I don't think we've met Tag yet, have we?
Not to my knowledge, no. Well, no, I think in the Leviathan chapter, I don't know if we named him. We just said, because we were Taylor's point of view and didn't know him, but there was some anonymous director, or not the Leviathan, sorry, the Echidna chapter when she goes to PRT headquarters.
Okay.
I think, I don't know if we know him for sure, but I think we've seen him before.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually not even sure if that is or is not him, but it probably is.
I don't know.
Yeah, it probably was. So it's Defiant insists that the PRT needs to clean house.
Hey, Matt, since when has Defiant become this awesome guy who is like totally right all the time and who I like?
Since he started hanging out with Dragon, I guess.
Yeah, apparently you lose one arm and you gain one heart.
Aw. I love this beat. That ship is long sailed, Keene commented, with the revelations about Chief Director Costa Brown, if you'll pardon my saying. You're pardoned, the Chief Director's voice sounded over the speaker, crystal clear.
That's the first we learned she's on the call, right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't even know up until that point.
Not only that, but the last we saw of Alexandria was her saying, I will tender my resignation as director of the PRT as soon as I get back to my desk. And then here she is, still chief director. So
Alexandria, you a liar.
Yeah. Not going to let go of that power so easily.
Well, they've managed, at least thus far, to keep that revelation away from the general public, right? That Costa Brown and Alexandria are the same person?
I think so. Maybe.
I believe they have.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually, but you're probably right. Yeah, so Alexandria points out that they don't actually need Dragon as much as would be assumed. They've contracted with the Dragon Slayers and their boss Saint, which Defiant is not happy with. So they compromise.
People.
Yeah.
I'm sure these are going to be antagonists.
Yeah, right. These are some trustworthy folks that we're bringing in. So they compromise. They'll have Dragon and Defiant's assistance through the next Endbringer fight, and then they'll clean house.
Yeah, and this agreement smells a lot like Taylor's I'll go back to school next year agreement, a temporary stopgap where people agree to like a nebulous future terms that may or may not honestly think they're ever going to abide by anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So we cut to Jack.
Yay.
Which is, we're back in Jack's head. That's nice. Enjoying the hell out of the broadcast that he's hearing. Bonesaw is working with her stasis machinery, and she puts Hookwolf in stasis, and he doesn't really quite seem to be himself.
Let that be a lesson to you, Hookwolf, and all you listeners out there. Joining a team of crazy psychopaths with the propensity to kill their members and make evil replicas out of them is never a good decision.
Yeah. It takes a long time to learn that lesson.
Apparently.
So as Jack strips and prepares to interstasis, he glimpses the rest of the room, row after row of cases labeled with the names of the 9, including past dead ones, Siberian, Chuckles. He glanced at the one isolated case, felt his pulse quicken a notch. It was the only one that was standalone. Gray Boy.
Who is this kid? And like the funny thing is, I know I'm supposed to be scared of Gray Boy. Like the scene is very much constructed to emphasize how big of a deal that is. But I can't stop thinking about these dozen Siberian clones that are just hanging out in pods. Holy shit!
Right. I mean, that's what's funny is he glances over the dozen Siberian pods, but his pulse quickens when he sees the one Gray Boy pod.
Right. I mean, we're really trying to like this is a whole nother level. This is S-class threat worthy.
Yeah. Yeah, so all right, that was I like that. I like that interlude. I like switching between a bunch of characters and framing the reactions around the
news report.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was a cool device. So then we go into 20.Y, another great interlude with our good friend Accord. So Accord enters the Forsberg Gallery to attend an important meeting with the Undersiders. Side note, in this arc, we've revisited a few old locales. We've seen Arcadia High and the Gallery, and both are pretty much in opposite conditions relative to how we last saw them.
Hey, Matt, that's like a really clever observation. I legitimately did not notice that up until you said it. It's like you do this for like a living or something.
Well, I wish.
Patreon.com.
Patreon.com. Yeah. So,
okay, let's move on.
Accord is irritated by the architectural disarray of the place and almost overwhelmed by the scattered destruction caused by Shatterbird. And now we see how Accord sees the world. His power is a constant source of intrusive thoughts. It provides solutions to everything that irks him, and pretty much everything irks him. And these are full solutions. These are conceptions of how it will look when it's done, how it works, full planning and implementation details down to the number of pages that the plan will take up.
Yeah. I was pretty generally like weirded out by Accord when we first met him, up until the point that like I think I said I didn't like it very much. It felt like almost too comic booky, like too unbelievable, like really Bond villainy to like an unbelievable degree. And it turns out that he very much is that, but it is in this amazing and believable way. And we will touch on that when we get to it.
Yeah. So he's really on edge, and he asks his subordinates to distract him. Citrine fails to call him sir, which certainly doesn't help his mood. And I think this is where we finally really understand his reaction to Sundancer's intrusion back in Migration. Things being out of order are overwhelming to him, and he's somebody with the power and the compulsion to fix them.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was missing in my interpretation of this in Arc 17 was the full understanding of the compulsion. I sold this guy and Wildbow by extension a little short. Of course, it's not just a random guy acting crazy like this. His power, his passenger, compels him to act this way. And that, I think, is a lot more believable and a lot and goes really far to make his crazy off-the-cuff reactions seem understandable, believable, and like they fit. Yeah,
absolutely. In fact, it turns him from a character that you're kind of like, I don't know, to a really interesting character.
Oh yeah. Very quickly too. Like it didn't. We're a quarter of the way through the arc.
Yeah,
and I'm already like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for this, inconsequential bit of lapse of etiquette, Accord imagines killing Citrine a number of different ways, and ultimately he does calm himself down, but it takes a lot of effort.
The age-old question of why the hell do you work for the crazy guy that could kill you at a moment's notice?
I don't know, Scott. I guess we'll see. So we get into a bit of his actual backstory. So apparently he solved world hunger one afternoon, and then he handed over the plan to his boss at the economic oversight department of the PRT, and the guy just ignored it. So he turned against the PRT, and then he was caught, but he escaped. So what's amazing is that Accord still seems to be pursuing this plan. This terrifying, screwed up villain is still working towards solving world hunger.
Yeah, because it's a problem. You gotta solve it.
Yeah, it irks him.
It's so Bond villainy, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I love this guy so much. He's evil, he's bad, but he's trying to save the world. and it's the world that refuses to get saved.
Yeah.
It's the world that that is against him.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of ties back into that status quo question we discussed on the mailbag last week. The PRT as an organization is like uninterested in large changes of the status quo. They want it to remain that way. So of course, a guy comes with an actual solution to actually change things. Like, no, can't do that.
Yeah. Right.
It'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. And I mean, plus the person would probably just be like, it's completely out of their depth to conceit, to understand even a plan that complex.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the top floor, the ambassadors encounter the Teeth. So there are 7 parahumans dressed in spikes and other superficially scary trappings, which I think is interestingly contrasted to the Undersiders, who are surrounded by swarms of insects and giant monster dogs and giant cloth spiders and scorpion.
Matt Perrion went goth, and it's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. I want. Oh yes, I want fan art of this right now.
Oh, this whole meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great.
Yes.
Somebody do that.
Yes. Thank you. I finally remembered in the right moment. So we finally see Skitter again after taking a little interlude break away from her, and now she is just full on Skitter mode. She's being terrifying and imposing and really like harsh and uncompromising relative to how we've seen her before.
Yeah, and this is kind of my worst fear realized from that last chapter, Matt. There's a moment earlier in 20.5 where Taylor is gone and Skitter contemplates how she never liked that name, that personality. Moments where I thought, hey, maybe Taylor will just abandon Skitter entirely. Maybe that Chrysalis will open and something new will come out. And of course, the other side of that coin was always maybe she will just instead double down on that Skitter persona, that with nothing left but Skitter, I have to be this person. And not only am I going to be that person, but I'm going to be that person more. And this moment seems to confirm this, at least for now. And I'm pretty bummed about it.
Yeah. So the Fallen now show up, and here we just have Valifor and Eligos, I believe. And immediately Valifor like challenges Skitter, and Butcher from the Teeth seems to share these doubts about following, quote, the schoolgirl.
Yeah, and I think maybe is this the reason why about what I was talking about, like, because to Taylor, Skitter was always that escape, right, where she could hide away from that pathetic, weak girl that she thought Taylor was at the time, and now that girl has kind of been exposed to the world, so she's got something to prove. She's got to prove that she's not Taylor anymore, prove that she is Skitter, and that's why we're seeing her a little more gruff and confrontational than even usual.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to like surgically push Skitter into becoming worse, then you might do something like this.
Yep.
So yeah, if everyone, so this is an example of how she's behaving. If everyone agreed to suspend the usual rules, I would be more than happy to go ahead and to go head to head with your group. Skitter replied. Of course you would. You outnumber us. Just me, Skitter answered them. And so since we're in Accord's head, for some reason it really makes me like him, that he like kind of steps back, notices that Skitter already has Valifor trapped with Silk, and tells him that it's already over. And I love that he's like just enjoying unraveling the mystery of what measures Skitter's put in place to ensure her victory over everyone present. Like it's like a fun puzzle by a fellow traveler.
Yeah, game recognized game, man.
Yeah.
The funny part about this to me though is that like he's yelling at himself about it too. He's like, oh, I wonder how no, I can't be distracted. And then like 10 seconds later, it's like, oh, the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah. Right. So at this point, Skitter is willing to discuss murder openly, and she's like against it, but acknowledges that sometimes it's just necessary, which I guess is fair because she did that. The deal she offers the other 3 Cape teams is still pretty harsh and restrictive. There's unfavorable territorial and financial restrictions. There's restrictions on the type of criminal activities they can be involved in. And there's an obligation to send a number of their members to any future Endbringer fights. So the Fallen like immediately just leave because it's obvious that Skitter doesn't even like expect them to even seemingly want to say yes. And the Teeth also say no, but Accord says yes eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the Fallen worship the Endbringers, right? So, I mean, putting that clause in the agreement is like literally, we don't want you to accept.
Right. yeah, like just get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose we're like supposed to give Taylor points here for being against murder generally, even though it's okay as long as she approves. It's like, and that goes back to something we've been talking about from the beginning, that anything is justifiable as long as she's the one making the justification.
Yeah, well, you trust Taylor's moral compass, right?
Oh yeah, it's great. It's really great.
Yeah. So they talk about the necessity to defeat Butcher, or more properly, Butcher 14.
Yeah, and I think this is a whole new variation on powers from what we've seen before, right? I don't think we've seen something quite like this. Like his passenger is bouncing from person to person and taking latent powers with it. That's very interesting. It seems very powerful too. I'm going to go ahead and guess that we're not done with this girl thing.
Yeah. I think it is a new thing. I don't think we've seen something quite like this before. So I wonder what it says that Accord grows to like and respect Skitter over the course of the meeting, and kind of toward the ending says you and I are very similar people.
Yeah, well, considering his only friend was Coil, it doesn't say a lot of good things. I love the silence after he says that, though.
Yeah.
You know, on some level it bothered Taylor to be compared to him. Like, in her head right now, that probably bugged her.
Yeah.
But on some level, I bet she kind of liked it too, because I think it's a clue that she's winning, that she's won the argument, that he sees her as Skitter, not that schoolgirl that was on the news. And I think it's a really cool moment. I love these moments where we're not in Taylor's head, but when we're looking at Taylor, because we know her so well that we can kind of predict what she's thinking.
Yeah, we can even predict the things that she's thinking, but not acknowledging that she's thinking.
Right.
So after the meeting, the ambassadors go off and discuss strategy. And interestingly, they all seem to agree that they could handle each of the other groups individually, but not together, which implies, I guess, that Citrine and Othello are pretty strong.
Holy shit. Yeah, and I think this serves to kind of complete that beat that I discussed at the very beginning, that the Undersiders, that Taylor's grip on power in this city is so tenuous. They've got 3 groups of enemies now, 2 of them openly, and one with Accord a little more subtly. It makes you think, like, if this is all Taylor has left now, what happens if she loses it?
Yeah. This is one of those things that makes this a setup arc, I think, because we're putting pieces in play clearly for future moves.
Yeah.
So after the meeting with his subordinates, he summons 5 of his best mundane employees to his chambers. They've all been vetted according to some procedure, and he tells them that they'll now be his ambassadors, and he dismisses them. And then he calls a number, a long distance number, which causes a Cauldron gateway to be opened near him. The number man greets him. Accord orders 5 high quality vials. And there's a small beat here. Accord thought of Coil as a friend, like you said. And now that Coil's dead, the plan hinges on the Undersiders, and the arc ends. In the end, they were responsible for billions.
So I guess we're just going to say that Coil's like doing all this terrible stuff because they're trying to save the world, which is, of course, because we're doing ends justify the means.
Yeah, that's why Coil needed to torture people in his private timeline.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like, is everybody working for Cauldron? Like, is there anyone not? Like, I want everyone to raise their hands and tell me who is not working for Cauldron. Oh, right, this is audio. That won't work.
I think maybe Skitter. Well, no, she is. She doesn't realize it, I guess. That's...
Yeah, like, and I really enjoy this ending. I think we established Cauldron as the next big bad, but we're also starting to lay those seeds of things are not what they appear. You know, we've seen it in Alexandria. She's hinted towards it. You guys don't understand, but we get it here again, and then we have Accord like fit neatly into the spot that Coil occupied before. It's almost as if Coil's been replaced. The difference is that before, the Undersiders had nothing to lose. They were trying to fight Coil, but they didn't have the city. Now they literally have everything to lose. And there's the big boss of the city, and it's working for Cauldron, and we're twisting everything and reinventing it and hitting those familiar beats, but in new, interesting ways, coming full circle. Again.
Yeah.
That's the last time I'm going to say full circle for a while.
I mean, it's the end of the arc, so I guess that makes sense. But it's, God, this was a fantastic arc.
What a arc! It's like I really enjoyed 18 and 19. I really did, and even 17. But it's like you don't even realize like how higher the bar can go. Like you're comparing them against each other, and then you get this arc, which is just like a step above all of that, and it's like comparatively, it's like that stuff was crap. I don't actually mean that, but I mean this is so good.
Yeah,
this is so good.
Well, it really elevates your appreciation for Wildbow, I think, because you now realize that all of this stuff that was sprinkled throughout the story was indeed intentionally placed setup. It wasn't just like, set dressing. It was set up for this enormously impactful moment. And this is the kind of thing I don't normally include on the podcast. And I may even be wrong here, but I believe that Wildbow said at some point that he didn't know how he was going to get Taylor out of the cafeteria.
Oh, really?
When he started writing that. Like, so that wasn't even like a planned detail. That was that thing that I was saying, like, guts me every time I read it, was something that he worked himself into a corner intentionally, because that's how he writes. And then he had to figure out a way out. And so did Taylor. And, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I figured we could expand the name game a bit here, because we met a bunch of capes. In fact, I didn't even list all of them, all the capes we met.
We don't have to do all of them just yet.
Yeah. But there was citrine, which on the one hand is a glassy yellow quartz, but also like that stone I read from various questionable looking sites about new agey stuff is like the prosperity stone or the success stone. So I bet it has something to do with that too.
Yeah, I think so.
And also I think like she's yellow, like her theme is yellow. So that makes sense. Othello, he's of course the tragic Shakespeare play / character of the same name. But it's also a game with black and white tokens played on a grid. I don't know if you got the detail of kind of like what his power seems to be. But it's sort of synergistic with that.
Huh. I don't think I have, no.
He
must have missed that.
He mentioned having an other self.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so he's like a black and white self.
Yeah. Sear just means dry or withered, usually applied to vegetation, which is straightforwardly what his power is.
It's accurate, yeah.
Yep. And adamant is, so I like this one because I almost didn't include adamant, because I was like, well, it's just like the metal, like the imaginary super strong metal, and he does metal, and that's easy.
It's adamantium, man.
Yeah.
It's Wolverine.
But it's also, of course, to be adamant is to refuse to be persuaded or to be steadfast, right? So it's yet another double meaning.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to circle back and get this one because someone pointed this out to me quite a while ago, and we never put it on the show. But dragon is, of course, a dragon, but is also a fierce and intimidating person, especially a woman.
I did not know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, somebody pointed that out when we were going down all of the dragon suit names, and they were like, hey, you missed like the coolest one, which is Dragon's own name for herself. That's
so weird. I wonder where that... That's interesting.
Yeah.
I need to look up that word origin and see how that happened.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder. All right, Scott, that's the name game. I'm eager to hear your speculations this week.
All right. First, let's get rid of some of those old ones. And by old ones, I mean they were ones that I made in the last arc.
Yep.
So I said that Taylor is going to go back to school. And Matt, I'm going to mark this as wrong because I'm not going to give myself credit here, because I specifically said that Taylor was going to return and attend school and probably was going to do it because her father asked her to. And those things did not happen. I don't think I get credit for Taylor being physically inside the school. I don't think that's really what I meant when I made that prediction, so I am not giving myself credit.
I think that's fair, actually.
Okay. The other one, I was wrong again. I said that Emma will pull a Greg, fucking Greg, and piece together that Skitter is Taylor and reveal this information to the world. Now, I got some of the details of this right. Emma did find out that Taylor was Skitter in the very next arc, but she did not discover it in the way Greg did it, and she was not the one that revealed it. She was just there when it happened. So again, not the intent of what I was trying to say with that speculation.
Yeah. And I think we're all happy with how things actually turned out. So.
Oh yeah, it's way better than I could have anticipated. Way better. As for new ones, though, my first one is, so we have this moment where Taylor has a 96.8% chance of being captured, and then somehow slides into, or 96.8, whatever, somehow slides into that 3% or so magically. And at first I was like, man, that's a little ridiculous story. Like, that's pretty amazing odds that she found herself in. But now I think that I'm not with Taylor here that Dinah betrayed her. I think Dinah's got something up her sleeve. She's planning something. The whole apology was seemingly meant to get those two people to see eye to eye on something. So I think Taylor walking out of that cafeteria in the way that she did was part of what Dinah wanted to happen, or what Dinah saw was going to happen. And the reason why they had to go then and there right now is for things to be orchestrated in that particular way. I don't know how that ties into what she's trying to do, and I have no way of speculating. Like, I have no idea what Dinah's playing at, other than Taylor's going to be there at the end of the world, and maybe she's trying to position things to get her in a place to do the most good in that end of world situation. I don't know, but that's just what I think. I think I'm mostly speculating this because it solves the problem of me saying getting out with that lower percentage is unrealistic and bordering on plot armor for me. But so that's that one.
Okay.
And then this is an old one that I'm bringing back now, Matt, because we marked it wrong, but I'm bringing it back after People Swarm. I said a long time ago that I thought that Taylor would eventually learn to control people, or rather capes, through the parasite that I thought the passenger at the time was. I marked that wrong when we found out that it really wasn't a parasite, although the more we learn about it, the more it kind of seems like a parasite. Anyway, my point is that I'm taking away my frowny face away from that one, and I'm putting it back on the map because I have now reconvinced myself that is definitely going to happen.
Cool. Awesome.
That's what I got for this week.
Always love those speculations.
I always love your terse silence during them.
my yep. Okay. Yeah, well, that will wrap up our coverage of Arc 20 Chrysalis. I hope everyone enjoyed our discussion and hearing Scott's reactions. As always, we appreciate your feedback, and we're always trying to improve, so let us know if you have any advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's episode.
Yeah, you can reach us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or on Twitter at gotwormpod. Once again, I have to reiterate that either the Arc 21 read-through on Twitter has already happened by the time you're listening to this, if I decide to do it in the next couple of days, or it's just not happening this week because we're recording these things very early. Our schedule's weird, so sorry. But that either already happened, yay, or sorry, it's not happening at all. My personal Twitter is at ScottDaily85, and Matt's is at Mambadibidi.
If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Worm, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world that you can listen to podcasts.
I think it's more Dinamail is his Twitter.
It's more Dinamail. That's right.
It's more Dinamail. Like, I want people to find you on Twitter. It's in the show notes. It's just really hard to spell, so I never spell it.
I'm actually getting more and more followers, so despite your best efforts, it's working.
Crisis. Okay. Yeah, you can find all the other podcasts we do, and all of our writing, essays, film, and TV criticism, and more at dailyplanetfilms.com. This week, as in the week you are listening to this, we will have our fall movie preview episode over on the main Daily Planet feed, which has Scott and Michael and maybe Matt. I don't know because we haven't recorded it yet. Go through all of our big movies of the fall. We'll tell you what you need to see and which are Justice League. Also, So-Called Writers will continue this week with another three words and another handful of short stories. The second episode of that just came out today as we record this, and I am absolutely loving it. I hope you guys are too. Matt, it's awesome.
Thanks, Scott.
You're doing great work.
Yeah, wow, it's really fun. I'm really happy with how it's going. Thanks for the compliment.
Yep.
And if you like any of these shows and you want to support them, we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms. If you like what we do here and you want to help make sure we keep doing more, consider donating $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Special thanks this week to Captain Planet John C., who pledged at the $10 level, and Cape Morning, who pledged $45 and is now also literally Superman. Scott, how can we have two Supermen?
I don't know, Matt. To be honest, I didn't really plan for this contingency. I feel like fight to the death, maybe? Or I guess we just let both of them continue to support us.
I guess.
Thanks, Cape Morning. That's amazing. Thank you so much. This was actually, they were a lower tier donor and upped it.
Awesome.
Today, I think, as we record this. So that's incredible. I wake up in the morning to these emails and I'm like,
yeah,
thank you so much.
I know, it's amazing. And I think there were like 4 Supermen running around at the same time at one point. So it's not,
I think that's true.
Not that big of a deal.
DC goes crazy with the continuity. Yeah.
Also, speaking of Patreon, make sure you stop by Wildbow's page and toss some money there because he's the guy who makes this whole thing possible.
Yeah, and if you can't spare any extra cash, as always, we do completely understand. What you can do is head on over to iTunes and give us a rating and a review. It helps other people find our podcast, which means it helps people find Worm, which means it helps Wildbow, which means by reviewing us on iTunes, you're basically saving the world.
Yeah.
Basically.
I think that's how that works.
This is especially important this week, Matt, because as of right now, as we record this, I don't have any new reviews to read. None. I don't even have like a 1-star, like a bad review to read. There's nothing. So please, guys, review us. I want to be able to read your nice words. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, and it'll make you feel good, too, to have your words read.
Yes, that's how that works.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for us this week. Next week, we're covering Arc 21 Imago. I think that's how you say that word.
Let's say yes.
Yeah, friendly reminder that Scott is going to be out of town next week, so this episode was pre-recorded, and we won't be able to address or comment on any of your great questions and comments, but we'll still be reading the Reddit, so, make sure you start those great discussions. But for now, Scott, what is Arc 21 going to be about?
Well, Matt, last week I joked about having to look up what a chrysalis was, but this week I legitimately had to look up what an imago was.
Me too.
This is another one of Wildbow's clever both definitions of the word work here plays, I think, because an imago is a fully developed adult insect as well as an unconscious, idolized mental image of someone, especially a parent, that influences someone's behavior. So my guess is here, Taylor is once again at kind of a crossroads. She's lost her identity, she's entered her chrysalis, and she's well on her way to becoming that adult, fully formed insect, that imago. What that imago will look like will depend on an imago. I think we're going to see Taylor make a big choice next week, a choice that will possibly be motivated by her mother, her father, or both. And I really hope that she makes the right one.
Well, we will find out next week on another exciting episode of We've Got Worm.